King. Oh boy, we're gonna have a fun time, everyone. Hi. Okay. I have so many things open on my computer. It's gonna be a little insane. Let's be honest. Okay. What do I want to have where is the question. Alright. Oh gosh. Oh, why can't I hear myself? Where is that coming from? Oh god. Which one of the things? Okay, there we go. I am not on the page I need to be on. Give me 1 second. Okay. Okay, we're live. We're live. We're live at 5. Hi everyone. Welcome. We have an action-packed stream planned for today. It's gonna be exciting. I feel like I don't know, I think something might be up with my camera, but I'm not gonna worry about it. Hello everyone. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you for the early crew hanging out. Hi Allie, hi Scotty, hi Rom, hi Ticket Black, hello Mike, hello Legata Rusa, hello Allison, hello Jonathan, hello Bears, hello Ulf, hello Joseph, hello Hellatrix, hello Casey Outlaw, hello Buck, hello Bears, hello Zuniki, hello Nathan, hello everyone, hello Maya, hello James. I have a new nephew, ooh, congrats. I see the content warning. I'll be living as I've been struggling with flashbacks the last week. Hope you have a nice combo. Yeah, for sure, precious pair. Totally get that. Thank you for taking care of yourself, and I'll see you next week. I will have a video out tomorrow that should be fun. So there will be content that's not this. You're a bit dark today. I mean, might be your image lighting problem colors. I was kind of playing around with how dark/light I wanted this to be. I don't know. I'm not in love with it. But then again, like, I'm never happy with my stream setup. I kind of just deal with it. Like, there's always something about it. I'm like, I wish this was different. But I think it's also, like, part of always being your own worst critic. So, today, I am also streaming on Twitch. So, hello to the Twitch people. I don't know who is choosing to watch me on Twitch versus on YouTube, but thank you. I just figured let's make this as easy for everyone to watch, essentially. Let's just, make it simple. So, oh, I need to let people know on Twitter that I'm streaming. So, normally what we do here, obviously, we do an interactive Q&A on Fridays. You guys ask questions, I answer, we talk about it. It's a fun time. This is an 18 plus only live stream. All of the usual rules and everything still apply. We are going to be diving into a particular subject today. I don't know if that's going to take an hour, 3 hours. I don't fucking know. You guys can ask questions and comment as we go along. I will be keeping up with the chat through that. So we may have time for like a general Q&A at the end, but for the most part, I think at the beginning here, we're going to be focusing on just the theme, just the topic. All right. I wonder how many of you guys know what I'm talking about. Did you guys like recognize the subject for today's stream, or are you just like, I'm here to hang out on a Friday, like whatever happens happens? Cuz it's been, you know what? I thought yesterday that I had like a wild day as far as like stuff that was riling me up, because you guys know, if you were on the Thursday Patreon stream, you know I went like full Hulk mode. I think is what we called it. I went full Hulk mode there for reasons. I was watching a Vice video that was financial domination, of course, financial domination, with no FinDom in it except for like a 5-second segment. It was mostly a dominatrix in New York that had no professional training whatsoever, walking men on leashes in the middle of the city. Really great PR for the kink community there. Thank you, Vice. Thank you, whoever that Dom was. It fueled my rage. Thank you for the follow over on Twitch. That is really appreciated. Trying to think of anything else we really need to go over before we get into it. There is a content warning that is pinned at the top of the YouTube chat, but we are going to be talking about stuff related to SA, sexual assault, victim blaming, consent, boundary pushing, stealthing, just like everything in that realm of like intimate partner interactions that go poorly. We're gonna talk about it. That's gonna be the subject for today mostly, and then if we have time, we'll do some like lighthearted stuff at the end. So, I have 7 pages of notes. As I said in the chat earlier. Oh, thank you, Mr. Beansman.
Thanks for your advice last week. I was able to talk to the person in my community that I wanted to talk to at a party this week.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad that worked out for you. So, definitely like the super chats and everything, I will read them as they come in, but I am going to focus on this. So I have 7 pages of notes here. It has been a pretty wild week as far as things have gone. There is a famous internet personality, sort of. I don't know if he's not like an influencer, but his name's Dave Portnoy. He's like he's 42 or 43, I want to say. And he is known for a place called Barstool Sports, who previously this year had some allegations against him made that, you know, essentially said that he escalated things from like vanilla sex to rough sex without advanced consent. He filmed women non-consensually, like really bad stuff. And then a couple of other women recently stepped forward about that. One woman like suffered permanent injuries as a result of her interactions with him. Really fucked up. His MO appeared to involve, by the way, he met like women on social media that were like 18, 19 years old, like freshly an adult, limited sexual experience. He's literally twice their age. He has kids that are like older than they are. Like, it's just a really like messed up situation overall, I think. And not a fun time to read about, especially because I just did a video on the pandemic, the epidemic of non-consensual choking behaviors, which was part of his thing, which in particular is really bad because choking is like the violence indicator for DV situations in terms of like likelihood of future escalation and fatality. So really not good stuff to see. Really dangerous. The Dom that was fucking doing stuff in public in New York City, that drove me crazy. So it's just been it's been a week. It's been a week of strong opinions. Yeah, I mean, yeah, Dave Portnoy, Barstool Sports. I remember him getting into a Twitter beef years ago with Philip DeFranco over, I don't even know what. It was like he was being like pissy about something, and like him and Philip DeFranco got in on it on Twitter, and like he just has always given me the like rich douchebag vibe of like, oh, this is a guy that's like, he's Gen Z, he discovered the internet, he thinks he's hot shit, and he uses his money to get 18-year-old women from Instagram to fly to his mansion home in Las Vegas or whatever the fuck, and then says they're gonna do one thing and then they do something different, and he doesn't take no for an answer. I got my hot tea. We got our ginger. I think it's just ginger, just hot ginger tea, because we need the hot spicy tea for this situation. Yeah, this is definitely, it's gonna be a serious chat. I feel like, did I miss something in the chat? I don't have my pop-out chat ready yet. I should probably do that. Trying to give people time to get in before we get into the rough stuff here, decide whether or not they want to hang or drop out. Don't know the theme here, take my mind off things I lost a mate today. Oh no, that's so sad. I'm sorry, Mike. Well, the topic is not going to be particularly light, but hopefully my furious passion for justice will will in some way help you feel a bit better. But if not, No worries about finding somewhere else to spend your time and hopefully get your mind off things. All right, so I think now is the time. Now is the time to get into things. Hello, welcome Teacup Tortoise, and welcome Temptica and Violet Noise over on Twitch. So I'm gonna just experiment. If I make this way brighter, do I like that better? I don't think I like that better. I'm just gonna have it be a cave because I think I need the darkness. Okay, so those unfamiliar with the situation, I'm gonna give an introduction for everything that happened, the Twitter background of what led to the discussion, and then focusing on an educational discussion, not a debate, a discussion, an educational opportunity, because that's what we do here, about the subjects of consent, casual sex, hookup culture, dealing with assault, trauma responses, all of that stuff. It's something that I'm really passionate about. I may end up making a detailed video at some point in the future talking about stealthing in particular because I feel like along with non-consensual choking, it's a behavior that's getting more recognized and talked about more, but it's also increasingly common. This is not just feeding off of the drama. This is not just like, let's shit on somebody on Twitter for 2 hours. This is like something that I think is a very public representation of something that is a larger issue that I've been witnessing at least since I've been in college and have been like a more sexually aware human being. the darkness it does. I may end up regretting the black lip gloss, but you know what? Actually, I'm pretty impressed with how well it stayed on when I sipped the tea. Been ages since I turned into one of your lives, Evie, but after this newest wave of hot mess discourse, I trust your community more than anyone else's. Yeah, I'm glad that you feel comfy being here. I'm gonna try my best. What we're gonna not do during this stream is slut shame anyone. We're not gonna victim blame anyone. We're not gonna be assholes. We're here to learn. We're gonna have a fun, educational time on a serious topic. So, what the fuck happened? What the actual fuck happened? So, yesterday, the day before on Twitter, there was a person that was not a public figure that had, I think, under or just about like 2,000 followers who shared a story of an uncomfortable sexual situation. It was a one tweet story. It wasn't a big thread. It was just a like, wow, this thing happened to me. Isn't that weird? And what they said was a dude slipped his condom off during sex after I asked him to wear one this week, and it's been bothering me, but I was too awkward to say anything. Not even the first time this has happened. Stop doing this, men. That was followed up by a second tweet a little bit later on after this ended up kind of getting a little bit of traction and people commented sharing that something had happened to them that was similar, or that just in general, hey, this is stealthing, this is actually not okay, and this is a form of assault. So after that, they added on the tweet that said, okay, I wasn't thinking about it as SA, even though it clearly is when I tweeted it, but I really don't feel like going through the extreme anxiety of filing a police report. And you think normally that would just be it, right? You'd have some people that would come out and be like, wow, that sucks. That happened to me. Hope you're doing all right. Just a little bit of like, wow, that sucks. That's what normally happens on Twitter. Occasionally things go really viral. They get a lot of attention, but usually, especially when it's a smaller account, it's like, oh, wow, this is a common experience and that sucks. And that's it. And we'll talk more about what stealthing is in a moment. So don't worry if you don't know what that is. For some godforsaken reason, and I'm not sure how this happened. I was not there to witness the happening of this. I saw it like a couple hours later. But for some reason, there were a pair of streamers, one of whom is very, 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 very famous, like probably the OG famous political streamer that's not like Sam Cedar or any of those people, right? Like an actual streamer, not like basically a professional radio call-in show. For some reason, they caught wind of it, and they decided that the appropriate course of action was to quote tweet this person that had a slim percentage of their followers and just basically went like piece by piece through this, by the way, single tweet story. Did not have any details, didn't have any like here's my fucking medical records type shit. It was just like, wow, that was awkward. And then they were like, well, you know what? If you saw him take the condom off during sex and you didn't stop him and you didn't say no, so actually it's you who are not mature enough to be engaging in casual sex. That's right. The person that had their bodily autonomy violated is the person in this scenario that is the one who is not mature enough to engage in consensual casual sex with other adult human beings, even though she did what most people don't do at all, which is establish boundaries before sex. As I have learned being an educator, as I have learned being a human being that interacts with other human beings in intimate fashions, most people do not know or are unable to, or think it ruins the moment to, in advance, establish what is going to happen and what they are okay with. That is not a standard, right now at least, for vanilla sexual interactions. Most people like to go with the flow. They go where the mood takes them, and they don't do any kind of conversation about, like, they just assume on both ends that, like, oh, well, we're not going to use a condom because she's on birth control. And then she's thinking, well, we didn't exchange STI results, so of course we're going to use a condom. And, like, just confusion and bad feelings ensue because no one communicates. But that's not what happened here. This person established boundaries beforehand, and then those boundaries are violated. And basically, this ended up blowing up on Twitter because everyone and their mom started commenting on this. Insert your mom joke here. And it evolved into conversations about victim blaming and consent culture and casual sex and hookup culture and what even constitutes assault, what you should do if you think an assault is happening, and like just everything. Everyone had an opinion about everything, and most of it was garbage and not backed up in any way by scientific facts. I am here with the facts. I have the data. I did the fucking research. I literally have 20 different papers opened up on my second monitor right here as a reference point. We're not speculating here. This is why this isn't a fucking debate. We're not going off of our fucking emotional feelings in the moment of what we intuitively believe is true. This is the fucking facts, okay? This is a small rant about debate bro culture. It is amazing how much all of them shit on feelings and emotionality, but most of their arguments are formed on like intuitive feelings of what they believe is right, and they just don't ever check themselves at any point. They're like, yeah, I think I remember one time I read a study about this thing, and they just like, they think it's that, and that's what you do. It's great stuff. High quality content. Also presume the worst possible situation for her side of the story. Oh yeah, that was a big part of it as well, is that like, because of the way that people interpreted things, they basically said, oh, well, you must have seen what happened. And that turned out to not be correct. So eventually it turned out that everyone who had originally commented on that under the assumption that she saw the stealthing happening in progress and could have said no and stopped it, that was actually wrong. Because eventually she ended up quote tweeting some of the quote tweets and responded. And this is where we get into the heavy language, so fair warning. Dude, I've actually been raped, and saying no just made him rape me harder, because the person that she was responding to had said, like, why don't you just say no? Because that's everyone's response, right? I noticed what had happened after he pulled out. It's not incomprehensible that I would rather just walk away from that situation than start a confrontation. Last time a dude tried to stealth me last year, I called him out because I saw him doing it. In this case, the damage had already been done. I wasn't going to gain anything other than risk a confrontation with a 200-pound, 6'4" man, and I would rather just go home. So turns out the reality situation was more complicated than people assumed based off of a single tweet. Who would have guessed that that was going to be possible? But instead of everyone admitting that they were wrong and going home and saying, I'm sorry, they doubled down and then basically engaged in both a combination of slut shaming and victim blaming that I don't have a word for. If you can make one up, let me know what it is when you combine those two things together, because it does appear to be an intersection. Essentially, they went, well, you've been assaulted so many times that you can't be trusted to say no, and clearly something with you is wrong. Because no person would ever be assaulted that many times. We'll get into the numbers on that. We will get into the numbers on that, won't we? And like I already said at the beginning, the reason why I'm talking about this is not because I'm interested in like litigating these particular tweets. I've read the exact verbatim quotes of what this person said about their story. I haven't even named them because I don't want you guys to go on Twitter and somebody sees this later that's maybe like a really big fan of Destiny's or something. I don't want anyone to like come out and harass this person. Oh, I didn't even say who it was. You guys can see from the title, fucking good old boy Destiny was the main perpetrator of this due to the size of his platform. Luckily, a really good majority of his fans disagree with his take. He attempted to disagree with one of those people in a debate with Hands of Hakir is his name on Twitch, and it went about as poorly as you could possibly imagine. He started screaming within 5 minutes of being on the line, because why not scream at people if you're trying to get your very refined and correct opinion across to people effectively? Just doesn't make any sense. But not here to debate, not here to shame anyone, not here to do any of that. We are here to actually get the facts, get the figures, and so on. And yes, it is very much rape apologia. We can call it what it is. It is rape apologia, and it's disappointing because it's these people who have commentated on this and said very negative things are somewhere on the liberal to left side of the political spectrum. I know that Destiny really resents saying that he's anywhere near left wing because that's the fucking arc that he's on currently. But somewhere to the left of Donald Trump, let's say. And people, despite their political labels and leanings, do not have a robust understanding of consent. They do not understand victim blaming. They do not understand consent culture. They basically are going, and this is why I'm talking about this, and hopefully can use this for future reference, is we're kind of seeing a shift, I think, on internet culture at least, back to like 2012 anti-SJW YouTube culture, where it's like, oh my god, look at the crazy feminists. Oh my god, look at these women complaining so loudly about their problems. And don't worry, we're going to talk about men as victims too. That's going to be part of this conversation. I had somebody like comment on one of my videos earlier today about an awkward situation that they were in, you know, that involved a partner who really wanted to be choked and how they pushed boundaries in order to like get this person to choke them. And I fully believe that men can be victims. I think that it is something that is something we need to talk about, something we need to study more, something we need to understand, because the circumstances under which it happens can be different and present differently, and it needs to have its own solution. So I think they need to be talked about together, and I'm not going to leave men out of this conversation, because literally anyone, regardless of your strength, your size, your age, your gender identity, your sexual orientation, anything like that, anyone can be a victim. Anyone can be a victim. For people who are just coming in, we are talking about consent culture and the facts about consent violations and how to prevent assault from happening. So that is what we're currently doing. That is what's going on. We're going to talk about stealthing. Don't worry, it's going to be in like a little tiny bit. But before we get into the main thing, I just want to really quickly outline what I saw on Twitter as being the main concerns of people and the things that I want to address in this. So number one is a lot of people, and these are all like thoughts that people were having. I'm not saying that I agree with these, but just like the main thoughts that ended up coming out in a lot of people's sentiments about this. One, people who freeze during sex, because one of the accusations was that, oh, this girl had a freeze response and that's why she couldn't say no to the stealthing, even though that ended up not being true. One, people who freeze during sex or who can't otherwise say no are not safe partners and should not be having sex point blank. Two, casual sex is more dangerous than sex in long-term relationships, so people who can't say no in particular especially should not be having casual sex. 3, we should be able to give advice to people on how to prevent assault and stick up for their boundaries. 4, we should not coddle women and infantilize them by believing that they are so immature that they cannot be expected to be able to say no during sex. And then finally 5, while assault is never entirely the victim's fault, According to these people should be able to take responsibility for their actions and how their behavior contributed to their assault so they can prevent it happening again in the future. Those are sort of the main points, and I'm going to try and address and give answers to all of those points or rebuttals to those points as we, go through this whole diatribe. We are done with page 1 of 7, by the way. We're done with page 1 of 7. Go us. So, looking at the facts, let's just start with the very basics here. The really big one that everyone hears about is 1 in 6 women will be a victim of rape at some point in the US. I don't know what the numbers are internationally. I literally spent 8 hours researching all of this. Didn't have time to get international numbers taken care of. That's how it is. So that number, when you actually get the percentage of it, is 17.6% of women. 3% of men in the USA have also experienced rape at some point in their lives. And the numbers are different depending on the age demographics that you look at and some other factors as well. What acts are included in that number, I think is really important to think about when it comes to applying that to this situation. So what is included, and as far as acts are concerned, in the percentage of people that have experienced rape? Rape in the study, which is from the CDC, I believe. The study has a really long name. It's the full report of the prevalence and incidences and consequences of sexual blah, 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 blah. It's really, really long. But the way that they defined it is it's an event that occurs without the victim's consent that involved either the use or the threat of force to penetrate the victim's vagina or anus using a penis, tongue, fingers, or object to penetrate those orifices, or the victim's mouth with a penis. So this included both attempted and completed rape. And most people that had experienced... I think most people that had experienced attempted rape had also experienced rape, completed rape or vice versa. I didn't pull that exact number out of the study. Sadly, I was a victim of my ex-fiance, and I was a male. So yes, men can be victims of females. Though I am switched, and I tend to be a dom majority of the time. I do feel it matters to show that it can be anyone. Well, thank you for feeling safe to share your experience as far as that goes. It is definitely the case that men are victims of intimate partner violence, and that should not be ignored. So what things are not included in those numbers? A lot of things that people consider to be consent violations or acts of sexual violence. That includes stealthing, which is the subject at hand today. That includes escalating consensual vanilla sex into kinky or rough or BDSM sex. That includes recording people without their permission. That includes revenge porn. These are all things it doesn't include. And then it doesn't include sexual or reproductive coercion, such as refusing to pull out when you agree to pull out before sex, or poking holes in condoms. And it doesn't include groping or molestation. When you actually look at numbers that include some of those acts, or at least some of those acts, the percentages of people that have experienced something like that gets much, much higher. But before that, let's define actually what stealthing is and if it's illegal. So stealthing is also called non-consensual condom removal. And what it means is that if you agree to use a condom before sex, during intercourse, the person covertly removes their condom, typically. You could technically do it in a really obvious way, haha, you can't stop me, I'm taking the condom off. But usually it's done in a covert manner because, fun fact, everybody's bodies are different, everyone's anatomy is different, and a lot of people do not necessarily easily feel the difference between, when you're a receptive partner, you don't necessarily feel the difference between having a condom on and not having a condom on, and have to be like, whoa, this is different, stop this right now. And even if that was not the case, still wouldn't be okay. And so basically it's the violation of consent that's based on only having condom sex, and then the condom gets removed, thus violating the person's boundaries. It is not illegal in very many places in the US. It is only illegal in California, and that was very, very recent. Elsewhere in the country, or elsewhere in the world, not the country, elsewhere in the world, there are other places. I believe the UK and Germany have those facts a little later on in this discussion of where it's illegal. But in most places, there are no explicit laws against stealthing, which makes this a very big invisible problem. That is difficult to get recourse for should it happen to you. I did have a Twitter battle. It was true. I know that even straight males who get essayed by women generally have to go to gay crisis centers because standard ones handle it so badly. That doesn't surprise me. I mean, people that are in crisis centers, like, they're always underfunded. They're never trained nearly as much as they possibly could be, and I'm glad that those crisis centers exist because there is certainly a gap in the care that is necessary for any gender, for any type of person experiences anything like this. There is a gap in things that we could be doing better, right? So before we go any further, let me just take a quick look at the chat and make sure we're all following along. Do we have any questions? It is, listen, the numbers get even higher, okay? And I checked multiple studies on this. I checked across decades. The numbers are consistent. The percentages are consistent. And you know, it's easy when you have one study that says one thing to go, oh, like, that's not true. When you see multiple studies over decades giving you the same numbers like that, or even getting higher over time, that's when it gets, like, all fucked up. That's when it gets even worse than it could be, which is already pretty bad. Let's be honest. I feel like the majority of everyone sucks with SA/R stuff in general. Yeah, it's something that's why I'm talking about it, is because this needs to be a conversation, and a lot of people just, like, do not handle it well. And there definitely are some numbers about, like, lesbian perpetrators and stuff like that, but it wasn't something that I specifically focused on because this was very much a heterosexual discourse moment. Because it was all men talking about a woman and her experience of assault at the hands of a man. So, you know, there's that. I know Destiny is. I know people that really like Destiny, and I, like, don't get it because it's like whenever I watch him, I'm like, he just, like, screams at people unless you already agree with him or you're a Nazi. He's fine with Nazis, but anyone else can just, I guess, deserve screaming and nothing else. So true. I've seen the shift too. It's a bit weird going back in time. Literally, though, it feels like we're going back in time. It feels like it's gonna fucking be 2012 again soon. And listen, I don't want to go back to 2012. That was not a good time in my life. Okay, we did not have good understandings about a lot of stuff in 2012. Okay. Oh no, my volume mixer. Where did you go? Oh, this keeps happening. Okay. All right. So part two. Those are the numbers about rape. Let's look at what happens to the numbers when we expand that to how many people experience non-rape sexual violence. For straight women, 43.3% of them will experience some form of non-rape sexual violence in their lifetime. That number is 46.4% for lesbians, and 20.8% for straight men, and 20.2% for gay men. And this includes the categories of coercion, unwanted sexual contact, and non-contact unwanted sexual experiences, which are kind of like vague terms, but do include more of the things that I listed earlier. So it's a little bit of a broader brush, but the broader you make that brush, the more people are going to experience more things, right? So there was another study. This study was giving numbers from 2000. There was another study that was done in 2010 that found 44.6% of women had experienced non-rape sexual violence compared to 43.3%. So really, really, that's, like, definitely totally within the margin for error there as far as, like, study consistency. And the number was 22% of men. Also totally within the margin of error. Really, really close correlation there. Study decade to decade, which is what we like to see. So where this number in particular gets very scary is when you look at bisexual people, both men and women. 75% of bisexual women, almost double, 75% of bisexual women experience non-rape sexual violence at some point in their lifetime. The number is a similar proportion for bisexual men. The number goes up to 47.3%. Don't really have a lot of data about why exactly that number increases the way that it does. Lots of theories about it. The theory that I think I am most inclined to believe as, like, a solid explanation, you know, apropos of nothing else, is that a lot of people have a perception that bisexual people are easy, they're slutty, they're down for anything, right? Because they'll have sex with at least two genders because they must be down for whatever. And so people that maybe would already be predisposed to commit acts of violence as like an opportunity thing have less restraint in doing those things and violating the boundaries of bisexual men and women because they simply do not view them as like as respected and as worthy of respect as straight people, which is like so fucked up. Like that is so messed up. It's like the most messed up thing. And I just like that number is so 75%. That is truly horrible. And unfortunately, I don't have this exact number in the study either, but it was something that I read, is that the majority of women that experience some kind of sexual violence as adults usually experience it as children first. So that is just really messed up. A lot of the people that experience rape, their first rape, if they experienced it multiple times, happened when they were underage. So usually between the ages of 11 and 17. This is something, because these studies don't always sort by sexual orientation and they just ask what your gender identity is. I don't have a lot of good comparative studies to verify that 75% number, but I did have a study that I had from the research I did on non-consensual choking. And in that study, they had found that 15% of women, 13% of transgender and non-binary people, and 21% of gay men and bisexual men have reported specifically, in particular just this one act, that specifically someone had put their penis into someone had put their penis into their anus without asking first. 15% just total. 15% of women across the board had experienced someone non-consensually attempting to put a penis into their asshole. What the fuck is wrong with people? That was specifically a study looking at college-age students, by the way. And the research over and over and over and over again indicates that people that are in college settings are incredibly more at risk for sexual violence than pretty much even people of the same age, but across the spectrum. And that's like why things like sexual health resource centers are really important on college campuses. CSA survivors suffer a horrible reality of constantly being gaslit as false memory syndrome because it happens so young and the memory can be repressed. How can a child forget? It's easy. Exactly. Like, your brain is really good at protecting itself, like, especially when you're young. And the way that trauma affects your brain, like, it affects your brain. Like, it's very, like, likely that when your brain is being rewired when you experience trauma, that like the memory is gonna fucking not work correctly. And like it's kind of like a data input issue as well. When you're experiencing trauma, your brain tends to like specifically focus on one sense when something is happening in the moment. That could be focusing specifically on the person's clothing or specifically on their hair or what you're smelling or what you're feeling. And that's like the only thing you can remember is that thing afterwards, because your brain was trying so desperately to remember the one thing it thought was the most important that it kind of just erases everything else. Because it's like, oh my God, we're going to fucking die. Like, we have to remember this one thing. We have to remember this one thing. We have to remember this one thing. And it just erases everything else. So, it's like, I don't know. Like, I definitely feel like reading this stuff is like really scary, but it's also really important to know because it indicates that we have like a problem that needs to change, right? So we're like on the base level of change is like understanding there's a problem and understanding the problem accurately, because a lot of people don't. A lot of people would guess completely different numbers for these things, and when you are kind of just guessing in the wind and going, oh, well, this isn't really that bad, right? Like, it's just something happens on the news, then you don't know what to do, right? What are some coping skills to help with my anxiety and PTSD? So I don't know exactly what you're dealing with, tattoo flutes, but personally, I would look up especially because you just got in a car accident and you could be dealing with like head and neck injuries potentially. I don't necessarily want to recommend like my first line option, which is dive response stuff. But Google DBT, as in the letters D, B, and T, DBT, like emotional distress, like tolerance skills. There's a lot of stuff you can do depending on what it is you're experiencing. But you're gonna know what feels best to you in your own body right now, what you feel capable of doing, and there's a bunch of options on there. If I have time, I will definitely like look up and like go over like specific things, because like there's like DBT workbooks and stuff that have like literally pages of like walking through exactly how to do these things and how to like proceed from like doing one distress skill into doing a different distress skill in like a calculated way to like bring down your like total like stress response. But as like a general thing, just like general good advice that is not necessarily going to be like a particular like DBT skill. Make sure you are getting rest. Make sure you're getting good, healthy food. Make sure you're staying hydrated. Don't strain your eyes, please. If you're looking at this on a screen right now, like it's okay to rest your eyes. Do things that help like lower. If you're having like a stress anxiety response and your like chest is like, you know, you're beating really fast and your heart's going, like do things to kind of help bring down your blood pressure and your heart rate that help, you know, calm you, whether that be like drinking a non-caffeinated tea. And by the way, like avoid caffeine, avoid things that are like uppers and would like cause more like in-body anxiety responses. Take a nap, have cozy things, practice deep breathing, get an app on your phone that does like a talk through of like a meditation practice. I really like doing something called square breathing, which is where you breathe in for like 2 seconds or 3 seconds. You hold that breath for 2 seconds, let it out for 2 seconds, hold for 2 seconds, and then breathe in again. And it's really, really rhythmic. It's really easy to do. Have a particular thing you can visualize and think about in your head while you do it. Also, just remember that emotions only last in your brain and in your body for a very short period of time if you don't reinforce them. And so if you can find a way to distract yourself for a sufficient amount of time away from that really intense emotion, it's easier to come back into like a more like functional or more like normal for you like state of being if you can break away from that like temporary really intense emotional feeling if you're dealing with that. I am not an expert at any of this. I am just going through you know, kind of what I know how to do, but definitely distress tolerance skills are really helpful. It seems like a couple people are reinforcing that's really helpful for them. A lot of people think DBT is just for people that have borderline personality disorder. It was invented for that population group, but especially when it comes to like emotional regulation and distress tolerance, a lot of groups of people across the board, people that have experienced trauma, people with anxiety issues, people with other, you know, mental health issues, definitely benefit from learning those skills as well. So that is what I like to do. Listen, people love sneaky anal, and I don't know why, because, like, anal's not good. Anal is, like, not good when you do it, like, without telling anybody about it first, and just, like, you can't, like, it's, like, it doesn't make sense. Like, it's, like, the butt isn't designed to have stuff going in that direction. Like, what do you think you can just shove it in and it's going to be the same as putting it in a mouth or a vagina? Because it's fucking not, like, dumbasses. Makes me angry, because like doing that either requires complete ignorance about how good anal sex works or complete disregard for the other person's comfort and safety. Like, what is happening with that number, you know? But if you don't think you're experiencing a head and neck injury situation, or a concussion or something like that, like if you're really experiencing like super high distress stuff, look up specifically like activating dive response, like distress tolerance techniques, because that's like if you don't mind having your head in cold water, it's very good for like immediately like I need to calm down right now type shit. Okay, sorry, I've completely gone off track. Let's go back to some numbers now that maybe you guys have some skills to do while dealing with listening to this. Oh, we'll do 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 maybe at some point. We can all calm down together. Okay. So, one of the big points in this conversation was that if you are someone that doesn't feel comfortable saying no, if you froze it out before, well then, or if you just can't say no in general, you're not mature enough to do casual sex. And so for your own safety, to not get assaulted, you need to only have sex in committed relationships, because a lot of people intuitively believe that sexual assault occurs more often in casual encounters and with acquaintances than with ongoing intimate partners. If you've ever researched any of this before, you know that that number is wrong. So, for the USDJ study that was from the year 2000, they found that for female rape victims, an intimate partner, as in a spouse or a boyfriend or girlfriend or a cohabitating partner, was the perpetrator of sexual violence nearly 62% of the time. So the vast majority of the time, it was an intimate established partner was the perpetrator of the violence. After that, you have 21% of perpetrators were acquaintances, 16.5% were strangers, and 6.5% were relatives other than spouses. So, you add all those numbers up, just to clarify this. If you add all those numbers up, you do get a number that is higher than 100. The reason for that is because many victims have more than one perpetrator in their lifetime, and this is trying to account for like all of the instances of like individual acts of rape and the type of partner or person that perpetrated it in that instance. So it does add up to more than 100, but without calibrating for not having added to 100, 62% of acts of sexual violence were started by an intimate partner. How a study defines intimate partner does vary. Some places, because they're very antiquated, and a lot of studies on this for a long time are really reluctant to differentiate between, like, people just assumed casual sex didn't happen, basically, and that if you were having sex with someone, like, in a consensual manner, that meant that you had to be in a committed relationship, because why not have internalized slut shaming and research about sexual violence, I guess. But in later studies, they did get better about actually splitting hairs a little bit more on, like, hey, like, what kind of relationship do you have with this person in particular when you say intimate, right? So a later study that was done in 2010, a decade later, found that for, again, female rape victims, 51% of perpetrators were a current or former partner, 12.5% were family members, 2.5% were persons of authority, that could be police officers, therapists, doctors, etc. 40% were acquaintances, that number includes first dates as well, and 13.8% were strangers. So generally, just going off of those numbers by themselves, it is more likely you will experience a form of sexual violence inside an intimate, ongoing relationship than a casual relationship. But it's worth diving into the numbers a little bit more than that, because why not have more data, more research, right? Because we want to really narrow down specifically, knowing not strangers, not this, what is specifically the difference between a casual sex partner and an ongoing date or a spouse or something like that in terms of the risk. So a really interesting study they did of male college students at a university. Ones that, I don't even know how they did this, but for male college students who had admitted having, I just can't imagine being that bold. Like, imagine, like, assaulting someone and then, like, admitting to it in a, like, academic study at the university you go to. That's, like, that's how you know you're not afraid of consequences in any way. Is you're like, yeah, fuck it, I'll fill out a survey. Why not? So a sample of male college students that attended a university, they looked at male college students in specific who acknowledged committing an act of sexual aggression, was the phrase used in this particular study. And they said, in that case, that 5% of their victims were an acquaintance, 4% was a friend or coworker, 33% were a casual date, and 58% was a steady dating partner or spouse. So, again, we're seeing it again, 10%, 20% more likely that you will experience intimate violence as part of an ongoing relationship versus a casual relationship. Oh, absolutely. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that Aquabot. Let's remember, assault can still happen with consensual sex, consensual partners. All it takes is the performance of an action without consent outside of what's agreed to. Oh, yeah. People think that, like, once you've agreed to sex, you're, like, always going to have sex with that person, always the same way again. And that is one of the things, and we're going to talk about different models of consent, but in the Fry's model, it's the last letter of the Fry's model. S is specific, and the R is irrevocable, right? So just because you consent to something once at one time doesn't mean you're consenting to it for always and forever. So getting back into the data a little bit here, according to two studies, one from 2006 and one from 1995, they did find that a preference for casual sex with many different partners was a risk factor for somebody to be a sexual assault perpetrator. Men who regularly committed sexual, men who sexually assault a casual partner are more likely to enjoy and seek out casual sexual relations as compared to men who sexually assault a committed partner. So like the dynamics of like what different type of men who commit different types of sexual assault want and why they do it is different. Interesting study if you want to look into the details on that. The techniques they use are different. The approach they use is different. The reason they do it is related but somewhat different. So in any case, they're not like, they're men who really enjoy casual sex are more likely to commit assault in the course of casual sex as compared to men that are like in a committed relationship. So a 20, oh, we have a super chat. Let me get to that before I run off. Okay. My lady and I invited a third to our scene, a friend, a self-claimed experienced submissive. We welcomed her to our sensation play, blindfold, hands, feet tying, etc. She safe worded every 30 seconds. I feel like, well, I don't know if she was saying yellow or what, but I feel like if you're going to say any safe word, probably just stop playing. Unless you've negotiated for your safe word to mean something different, or just slow down, or just check in. That sounds like a very confusing experience to be in as a top, and I hope that she's doing okay. And I hope that you got to have, if you did have a debrief about why that happened, definitely do that. Personally for me, if I was topping in that scenario and anyone safe worded anything near red or like this needs to stop immediately, I just wouldn't keep playing. Yellows are different. If it's like, hey, slow down, check in, whatever, that's a little bit different, but in any case. Agreeing to marry someone doesn't mean agreeing to take consent off from the equation. Oh, exactly. Totally. And I mean, I think we're better better now than we were in the 1950s about the concept of spousal rape. But it took us a while to get there. Remember back in the day when people believed that you literally couldn't assault somebody you were married to because you had agreed before God that they had possession of your body? That was a time period to be alive, wasn't it? I'm really glad I wasn't married then. Each time we stopped, check in, and talked, but she only giggles. No explanation, no issues. Oh, okay. I knew people that were like this, and I haven't been around them in a long time, so I don't know if they still do this. So I'll just say they used to do this. There was somebody I knew that liked to say red for fun. That, like, instead of saying no, stop, please don't, as like a fun teasy thing, they teased about saying red. They were like, oh no, red, stop. And they'd say red again, like not like literally 5 minutes later, but like over the course of the scene, they say it multiple times, which is a really bad habit. If you're submissive and you're listening to this, safe words are supposed to mean something. If you don't mean it, don't say your safe word as a teasy, jokey thing. It's really confusing. It's really not good for your own safety if you ever need to actually use it for real. Because at that point, you are literally the parable of the boy who cried wolf. Don't do it with yourself. It's just bad. And that was me. I would not in any way ever feel safe playing with that person again because I would not be able to trust that either what I was doing was consensual or that they were really okay, or they would be able to effectively communicate when something was actually a hard no. Yeah, the person that I know that used to tease with safe words, they were a brat, and I guess you could say it was part of their bratting, but they were the only brat I ever knew who did that, so I wouldn't want to blame the brat for doing that. After 5 minutes, I called it and sat her in the corner while I worked on my girlfriend. We liked her, but I needed advice on how to confront the safe word spam. It's scaring off the unicorn. Okay. Yeah, scaring off the unicorn. I get that. Finding a unicorn is really hard. When you finally have one that likes the same things that you do and gets along with both you and your wife, it's like, oh my God, I shouldn't let go of this because if I don't keep going with this, I may never find this thing again. Again, personally, just want to reiterate, if I was you, I would not continue to see this person because I would never be able to trust that they actually like meant no when they said no. This is a technique I'm going to talk about later in this video, but I can go ahead and bring it up now. If you're worried about a person not being able to handle rejection, really good technique you can use is a positivity sandwich. Good thing before, good thing after, bad news in the middle, right? So you can say, hey, it's super hot being able to play with you. I'm super into you. I'd love to play with you more. But as a top, I feel uncomfortable with you saying the safe word in a teasing way. And then you go on like, there's a bunch of possible solutions for this. One, you agree that the word that she is saying currently doesn't count as the real safe word, and you establish a different real safe word. Like, let's say she's been saying the word safe word over and over again. Okay, well, now you agree she can say the word safe word for play if you want that, because you're the top, you're in control. But then maybe you agree that red is the real safe word, or mercy is the real safe word, or whatever else, right? Pineapple, kumquat, whatever the usual words people like. You can agree that a different word is the real safe word. You can agree to a nonverbal safe word. Humming a particular tune, rhythmic tapping, squeezing, but you do have to put out a little bit of an ultimatum. If she is a submissive that is all attracted to the stern daddy type, this might actually work in your favor to be able to communicate this in a way that comes across as positive and not just like causing her to implode. But you have to put out there, like, we will not, like, this is for your safety. It's for your partner's safety. It's for her fucking safety, for her future relationships, honestly. Like, you have to communicate, like, hey, it's, like, safe words are serious. You can't misuse them. I will stop and check in with you, but not everyone is going to do that. You have to use the word that we agree is the actual safe word as the actual safe word. And if you mess with that, I will stop the fucking scene and never play with you again. Like, the reason why people teasingly, and like, this is boundary pushing, this is submissive boundary pushing, this is coercion. The reason why they do this boundary pushing coercion stuff is because they can usually get away with it. People usually won't tell them no because they're high value females. Right? I fucking hate that. But like, that's how they think about it, right? It's like, oh, well, I'm just asking for what I want. I'm just having fun. It's not that big of a deal. I'm not hurting anyone. It's just about me. And it's like, I mean, as a top, that mentally fucks with you. Like, if I was playing with someone as a top and they kept like teasing a safe word at me and they didn't mean it, like, I would not be comfortable with that in any way. So if you feel like you want to try and navigate a second time to see if you can make something work, go ahead and do that. Make sure you have that hard conversation. And if they get scared off by being told that their behavior is inappropriate, they are not mature enough to be engaging in BDSM. They are not, like, there are certain things that you have to be able to do when you engage in BDSM. If you agree to a safe word, the thing that you have to do is use the fucking safe word appropriately and not abuse it. Because it hurts everyone to do that. She doesn't say squat, though. She only giggled. Maybe it was just nerves. Okay, well, even if it's just nerves, it's still not, you don't get to, like, think of the inverse of this. You negotiate for a scene, and you tell the top, don't call me a slut. I don't like that word. That word's really upsetting to me. And during the scene, because the top is nervous, they lean super hard into the degrading language and they call you a slut and a whore and everything else. And then when you say, hey, what's going on? They don't answer you. Just because the tables are turned doesn't mean that it's okay. It could just be that she was nervous, but you don't know that until you talk to her. So you have that conversation and be like, hey, I need you to treat this seriously. Like, let's figure out why this happened. Can you talk to me? What were you going through? How are you feeling? Like, because it could be like, I'm feeling nervous and I don't like this and I don't want to say that I don't like it. Or it could be, I like playing and teasing and this is the way that I play and tease. Or somewhere on that spectrum, or a different thing. And you gotta figure out where in the world the situation actually is, right? You need communication at some point. If not, nothing can really work out. Exactly, because like if they can't use the safe word appropriately, they can't tell you anything when you're checking in with them, and they can't tell you what's going on during a debrief. this person is not a safe person to play with. Like, I get nervousness, I get anxiety. I have had moments when I have played as a bottom where I've gone non-responsive and I haven't been able to talk to my partner in the moment. And immediately afterwards, I'm not necessarily able to communicate what went wrong. But I try to at least have that conversation at some point later when I've had the ability to, like, internally analyze what happened. But, like, at the end of the day, there are other fish in the sea. I know that finding unicorns is really hard and having a third is really exciting. What you don't need is a third that will ruin having thirds for you for the rest of your life. It's not as common. Most people that end up getting burned in the triad relationship is the unicorn partner, because couples privilege and a lot of other bullshit and veto power. But it can happen the opposite way as well, where the unicorn comes in, ruins the relationship, just messes things up in general, and it's not a fun time. Not a fun time. Yeah, for me, red/safe word means the scene is over. Oh, absolutely. I agree with that 100%. And for most people, it does mean that, but not necessarily everyone. Some people like to play around with it, which I don't encourage, but like I also can't stop people from doing it, you know. I might have to reheat my tea here in a moment. So we're going to get through the rest of this point, and then I'm going to reheat my tea. How about that? Okay. So, I'm listen, of the fight, flight, freeze responses, my fight response has been going since like yesterday at 8 p.m. So like, oh, I am going to need a little aftercare after this. Maybe Sunday I'll have time for that. I need to dye my hair also. You can see my roots. But, you know, life must go on. Consent question. Do you consider it a violation of consent to put a photo/true story on a fetish website when it wasn't taken in a fetish context? If it's a picture of yourself, no. If it is a picture of anyone else that does not know that photo is being distributed, that is against the law. If it is an intimate photo of a nude person or a sex act happening, in most places it is like I think in New York and I think other places as well. There is consent that you get for taking the photo that is separate from the consent that you get from distributing the image or distributing the video. So you have to be really careful about that. Make sure you understand that the person that is in the photo understands what's happening. Technically, the copyright of the photo is held by the person who took the photo and not the subject of the photo. That is why celebrities get in trouble from paparazzi people for posting paparazzi pictures of themselves on Instagram. Copyright law did not catch up to 2022 fast enough. That's life. But that doesn't make it ethically or morally okay, and potentially even legally okay to distribute it online. That's crazy. I've been seeing that a lot on Dacrophilia forum called Crying Lovers. Is there anything I can do to report that kind of behavior? Like legally, I don't know who you would report that to. I am sure if I did some Googling, I could find the place that you go to like leave tips to because if it's like an international or a national website where people all over the country are like submitting photos to like a forum, that feels like that probably is more of an FBI thing because it is like across state lines at that point. But a lot of people don't realize that like, that kind of content is like not consensual or legal to like repost other places. Depending on the nature of the image, that could even constitute revenge porn. And that's not good. But a lot of people think, oh, well, it's just crying. It's not like it's like a penis or a vagina. Like, that can't be that bad, right? Well, it's like, if it's on a fetish board for like fetish content things, like, most people don't, if they have a photo of them crying or something, like, people don't know that's going to be distributed for other people to jerk off to. Like, that's gross, you know? And yeah, but if it was just a story, if it was like an anonymized story of like one time this thing happened with this one girl, and there's not like personally identifying information in that post, I think sharing stories is fine. It's the photos of people that would be the big issue for me, because people share stories all the time online that are anonymized. That's not the issue, it's the photo distribution. On a lighter note, I went scariest costume in a college Halloween event by going as a paparazzi. That is great. That's a great one. That's a good one. Yeah, every place is different when it comes to reporting. So I think you have to look around for that, but I am sure someone somewhere has that information, because when you think about it, like when it comes to taking down, like, I don't know, like the crazy websites that are out there that are like literally like CP farm forums, like someone has to investigate that shit. You gotta report it somewhere. Someone has that tip line. Someone has that tip line. Oh, deepfakes. Deepfakes are going to be the next thing. Okay, this is we have choking, we have stealthing. In 10 years, it's going to be deepfakes. They're going to be all over. Because, like, people love jerking it to, like, Rule 34 porn. People love being like, oh my god, my favorite video game characters are in a porno. I love it so much. People love that stuff, and they love amateur stuff. Can you imagine what you could do if you could deepfake somebody into being in, like, a VR porn? Like, it's not gonna be a good time. It's like, this shit is getting worse before it gets better, as far as like consent and legality and all of that are concerned. I feel like if you have explicit consent from the person that sharing the photo is okay, that's what's important. Proving that legally is a slightly different question, but if, like, morally, ethically, if you can tell someone, hey, I think this photo of you is so beautiful and I'd love to be able to share it with some other people I know would appreciate it, are you comfortable with this being posted on, like, on a forum for other people to have this fetish? Like, you can ask that question. Some people are total exhibitionists and do not have any reservations about that. I would fucking love it to know that other people are jerking off to their photos. Other people, they're like, I work as a preschool teacher, I do not want that photo anywhere online because that could harm my employment. Like, you know, some people are really into it and some people are really not, and both people deserve respect. Both people deserve respect. Okay. Let's get back into the numbers, shall we? Let's get back into the numbers. So let's see, where were we? Yes, according to a 2006 and a 1999 study, a preference for casual sex with many different partners is a risk factor for a sexual assault perpetration. Men who sexually assault as a casual partner are more likely to enjoy and seek out casual sexual relations as compared to men who are sexually assault a committed partner. A 2014 study examining the connection between relationship type and assault found that 48% of perpetrators were in a committed relationship with a victim that included previous consensual sex. 14% were in a committed relationship that did not include previous consensual sex prior to the act of sexual assault. So, again, we're running into that 50 to 60 something percent range of perpetrators being in committed relationships, compared to 20% were in a casual relationship with a victim that included previous sex, or 18% were in a casual relationship that did not include previous sex acts prior to the assault. So, again, over and over and over again, we are seeing the higher likelihood of sexual assault and sexually inappropriate behavior is coming from people that are in committed relationships. Still a factor, but not as high for people that are in casual relationships. As compared with perpetrators in a committed relationship with a victim, those in a casual relationship were more sexually dominant, more positive about casual sex, had more one-time only sex partners, and more frequently drank heavily. Casual partners were less likely to have planned to be with a woman or to have sex with her beforehand. They misperceived the woman's degree of sexual interest for a longer period of time. They tried harder to get the person alone, drank much more alcohol, and were with a woman who drank much more alcohol compared with committed relationship perpetrators. That sounds like a weird phrase, but I guess that's what it is. So there is a risk factor associated with a particular type of person that is seeking out casual sex, and I'll talk about this later on as part of like, how do we actually, help give people actual good advice before things happen, for like detecting red flags and knowing if something might end up being dangerous or not. So again, basically in summary, by itself, being in a casual relationship with someone does not lead to more instances of assault compared to being in a committed relationship. And actually, committed relationships can be, in fact, more dangerous. Yeah, deepfakes are like, I don't know. Maybe deepfakes won't take off. I don't know. It can lead to someone being sought out, stalked, harassed, and assaulted. It can literally ruin someone's life. I'm not sure exactly what that comment is in reference to, but probably yes. Okay, so now that we know the percentages of people that have experienced assault, and we know the types of people that perpetuate assault and the types of relationships that they are in, and that those numbers are very, very high as 75%, 40% roughly in general for women to experience non-rape sexual assault, 20% for men. So altogether, including rape and non-rape instances of SA, we're looking around the 50 to 60% range. So over half of women have experienced some kind of sexual violence, including rape and not including rape. That number is disturbingly high. There are a lot of ways that you can respond when an assault happens to you. Right now, I'm going to tell you that no particular way that you respond deserves ridicule, because you've probably heard of fight and flight as a response. There is a third one that can also happen that is called freeze. All of these are physiological responses to a threat. Your body experiences a flood of cortisol, a flood of adrenaline, when it realizes that you are in a dangerous moment, to prepare for some kind of action. That could be flight, that could be fight, that could be freeze. But basically what your brain has to do before you've even realized what's happening, literally in milliseconds, it has to make a snap decision. And I might get emotional talking about this part. We're not going to unpack that on stream. But your brain, without you necessarily thinking about it, has to make a snap reaction to decide how to act to preserve your bodily safety. It is not a conscious decision. Women and men that freeze as a result of assault are not doing so because they don't know better. They don't freeze because they're stupid. They don't freeze because they are unable to say no. They freeze because their body is making a snap judgment of what is best to continue being alive. That is what happens. It's an automatic reaction. And basically what freezing is compared to flight or fight, it's when your body is, it's like if the coin landed on the middle during a coin toss. It's like, we don't think fight will work, we don't think flight will work, or we can't decide between the two, and so we freeze. And your body, and there's like, you can have a hypo reaction as opposed to a hyper reaction, which would be this. You can have a hypo reaction, which typically looks more like a fainting response and becoming completely passive and having complete muscle laxity, because your body's literally thinking it's gonna die. That is another response you can have. That's not freezing. That's for very extreme situations, typically, where your body's like, I literally have to disassociate and completely disconnect physically and literally play dead. But freezing is not that. Freezing is not when you go completely limp and you lose all of your muscle tone and you literally faint. Freezing, you still have the energy in your muscles. You still have all of that preparation to make an action, but you can't make an action. This is an automatic response. This is not something you have control over. And it comes in various degrees. A lot of people think that a freeze response looks like literally going completely clinically catatonic, not being able to blink, not being able to change where you're looking, not being able to make any movement, not being able to speak. The degree of your response is proportional to basically how big the flood of cortisol is and how extreme of a reaction your body decides is having, and it exists on a spectrum. That can include things, going physically unable to move, becoming mute, going physically numb, where you feel kind of away from the sensations, you feel disassociation happening, and different people are going to have different amounts and different like things happen while they freeze. But basically, the point is that when you're freezing, even if you wanted to, even if in your head you are screaming at yourself to say something, to fight, to run away, you can't. Because your body is like, fuck it, we can't do that. That's not safe. We have to shut down. We have to shut this down because if we don't, this is going to get really, really dangerous. So this is not about like somebody like, oh no, it was awkward and I couldn't say no because I didn't have self-confidence. Like having a freeze response is not a fucking self-confidence issue. It's your brain trying to make sure you stay alive. Like, so we will talk about fawn response in a second because that is very specific and it's not necessarily a default physiological response. It is more of a learned response. So freezing, how common do you think freezing is? It sounds like a pretty extreme reaction, right? It sounds pretty unusual. Most people would fight or flight, right? Most people would fight their attacker. Most people would run away, right? Default assumption in the world is, well, if this was happening to me, I would deck them. I would run away. I would kick and scream and do all the stuff I'm supposed to do, right? It is actually very, 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 very common. A freeze response during an SA is it is the majority response. In total, 70% of cases of sexual assault feature some kind of what is called tonic immobility, which is the freeze response. 22% experience significant immobility as a result of the freeze response. That's when you're able to do some things, but not everything. And then 48% experience what is called extreme immobility, which is the classic, like, stereotypical freeze response of can't move, can't talk, can't speak, can't do anything, frozen in your body, disassociating, like, really hardcore. So it is very, very, very common. And the thing that makes this even worse, especially if you're going to shame people for having a freeze response, is that people that were victims of assault as children are twice as likely as the rest of the population to be assaulted again as adults. And people who experienced assault as children are more likely to exhibit a freeze response and a more extreme freeze response compared to the general population. Because part of this, and this is not a victim blaming, this is the thing. Your brain develops neural pathways around responses to threat if it learns that something works and keeps you safe. As a child, your ability to effectively run away or fight a perpetrator is much less than a fully grown adult, particularly if the perpetrator is an adult. So if you experience assault as a child, you are much more likely to have a freeze response because that is the only way you can keep yourself safe, which means that when you experience the same thing as an adult and those memory pathways are triggered again, those neural pathways are followed again, your body is more likely to go, oh, well, the freeze response worked the last time this happened 15 years ago. Let's do that again. Again, it's your body learning ways to keep yourself safe. It is not your fault. It is not anything. If it fucking works and you're still alive, it fucking worked. Like, that is my opinion on it. That is, at the end of the day, if you are fucking alive after you are attacked by another human being, your body fucking succeeded. Do not shame yourself. That is what you were supposed to do in that situation. A lot of people think that a freeze response is not a protective response. That if you were protecting yourself, you would fight, you would scream, you would run away, you would spray them with pepper spray, you would do anything except freeze. And if you are freezing, that means that you are not protecting yourself. Well, the research indicates that men who feel entitled to have their needs met, i.e. they feel entitled to have sex with you, become angry and punitive and violent towards people that deny them access to what they believe they rightfully deserve. 32% of people that are raped are injured as a part of their assault. Having severe injury as a result of violent resistance against somebody trying to assault you is very common, and it could, depending on the person, become worse than just an injury. So, sexual violence survivors are often expected to have actively, outwardly resisted a perpetrator. For example, by shouting or physically resisting. When survivors do not resist in these particular ways, their behavior is not seen as self-protective. Recent research, however, looking at sexual assaults perpetrated by strangers, I will note that because that is a caveat compared to other types of assault, has challenged that framework. It shows that tonic immobility or freeze response may actually serve a protective function for sexual assault survivors. When a survivor becomes verbally and physically frozen, the perpetrator may not need to use as much physical force to get the thing that they want. So actually having a freeze response on average means that you have fewer and less severe injuries than somebody that had a different type of response in those scenarios. Again, it's sort of like playing dead. Having a complete like hypoactive response to an assault would be more like a complete playing dead scenario, but it is very similar in that, like, if somebody is determined to hurt you and you fight back, they are going to fight back harder and escalate the violence. So that's why your brain has to be very careful about how it decides it's going to react to a particular situation. And it may, having a freeze response may help avoid further escalation of danger. So for example, if you know you're in a situation where, like, there's a gun in a home, there's another deadly weapon around, you're alone, it's at nighttime, if the person that's attacking you is under the influence of drugs or alcohol, or if they've done something like stealthing to demonstrate that they have otherwise recklessly disregarded your safety, a freeze response may in fact be the appropriate response for your own safety. So if we could stop shaming people for not saying no because they literally can't, because their body is physiologically doing something, you like when the freeze button gets pushed, you can't mentally will yourself to unfreeze. Like, your body has to thaw out on its own once the cortisol comes down. It's like, unless you have some insane mind monk brain training powers, it is very hard for your brain to be like, oh, we're just gonna not be frozen again now. Because trust me, a lot of people that go through SA want to unfreeze, want to be able to run away, and can't. And it's not because they're weak. It is not because their bodies are doing something wrong. It's literally a base core brain thing that you do not necessarily have control over. I've seen people in freeze in physical altercations to get the shit kicked out of them. In Destiny's World, the inability to fight back in the moment means that they're stupid or whatever. Well, like, freezing during a physical, like a fist fight is different from, like, freezing during an SA. I don't necessarily know what the data shows on that, but, like, again, it's something you don't have autonomous control over. If your body's like, the thing we need to do right now is shut down, and that's why when you're, like, getting into the military, that's why when you do training, you get desensitized to all this stuff, because the Army doesn't want you to have a freeze response in a combat situation. If you are going to be in a situation where there is, like, consistent elevated cortisol levels, and you're going to be going through a lot of, like, fight or flight response stress, they try to desensitize you to it so you can train your neural pathways to have the fight response instead of the flight or the freeze response. But expecting, like, taking that as a note here for a second, expecting people to train themselves like they're joining the military to prevent a freeze response during an SA is, like, completely such a bonkers idea of an expectation for people that I sincerely hope nobody is like, that's the thing we need to teach people to do. Because it might not even be safe. It might actually just make things worse if depending on the situation, right? And you don't know, you don't necessarily, if somebody's already shown a level of disregard for your safety and boundaries, you do not know what they are capable of doing. And they might not even know, right? If they're under the influence of drugs and alcohol, they might go, well, you know what? I'm already going to get arrested, so might as well go all the way, right? Who gives a shit? And it's super fucked up, but it is what people do. Okay, so I mentioned fawning. Somebody else in the chat, I think, mentioned fawning as well. And basically, fawning is the fourth-ish type of response you can have to a trauma scenario. However, unlike freeze, fight, and flight, fawn, as far as the literature that I read is concerned, and this, if you know this is different, please correct me. But as far as I found in the literature, It is considered basically a trained response that you learn over time as a person that has experienced childhood trauma or PTSD, and specifically CPTSD, which is complex PTSD. And the reason why this response happens as something you develop is, again, because if you are a child and you are going through something, your ability to defend yourself and run away is very limited. So your body has to come up with a different way to deal with something. And you may learn that freezing doesn't work. Freezing may actually, if you are in like an abusive household, freezing and doing nothing may actually piss off your narcissistic abusive parent more, and that may not work. So your body may come up with a fourth alternative in its ability to keep you alive, which is the fawn response. And basically, the fawn response is when you act to please the perpetrator immediately in order to avoid further conflict. You basically give them what they want. You minimize your own feelings. If this is an ongoing thing, you may have problems with emotional enmeshment with the person that is your perpetrator or with other intimate partners later on in life, where you are unable to tell where your feelings begin and your perpetrator's feelings end. It may be very difficult for you to be able to tell what you individually genuinely want as opposed to going along with what the people around you want. It may be very difficult for you to say no. It may be very difficult to be able... It may actually be very easy for you to ignore your own desires over the desires of others, and you may be very, very, very conflict avoidant because you learned that that was very scary for you at a young age. And basically, the reason why this is sort of like a lesser known response is because in society, the fawn response is treated as basically what is considered like the nice thing to do if you're a woman, right? If you're a nice girl, if you're sweet, if you're a people person, if you're selfless, then of course you care about what people want. Of course you want to do things that make other people happy. You know, you're just such a sweet person for being able to care for such an asshole. That's not necessarily the case. It is a learned response to conflict when other forms of avoiding the conflict were not safe. Fawning is definitely learned as someone who has CPTSD. Oh, sorry. It went away. Let me find the comment. Fawning is definitely learned as someone who has CPTSD as a childhood trauma victim. I've learned to pander because it stops bad things happening. Problem is, it affects consensual relationships. Yes. If you are, and I'll talk about this because the big question is like, oh, people who have this, are they safe to have sex with? If you become aware that this is part of your pattern and you have mental health support, this is something that is navigable in your relationships. I would imagine, there's a personality disorder that's like kind of like people get it confused with the fawn response. Now I have to look it up because I can't remember. Is it avoidant personality disorder? It's either avoidant or dependent personality disorder. Sort of one of the ones that not a lot of people know about. I think it's dependent, now that I thought about it. Because avoidant is like, you just are not able to have interpersonal connections. I'm laughing because it's like a way oversimplified response, and it's like funny to try and summarize these in a... but it's like one of the anxious subtypes of like personality disorders. I think that's what is it called? The cluster B, I think. No, cluster C. Cluster B is like borderline and histrionic and stuff. Anyways, I haven't taken abnormal psych in like fucking bajillion years at this point, 8 years, so I can't, literally it's been probably 6 or 7 years at this point. It's been so long. But anyways, moving on from that, now we know about all the things that your body does to try and keep your ass alive during danger. And the next thing that people think is, well, I wouldn't be like that. And if you're a good person, you wouldn't be like that. If I was confronted with a dangerous situation, I would simply say no. I would simply fight them off. I would simply stab them in the eyeballs. That is what I would do if I had to do it. I like to call this, and maybe one day I'll submit a paper with this title, I would like to call this the "what would you do" reaction myth. If you grew up in the US, if you're around my age or a little bit older, you may remember a show that is called What Would You Do? had to watch a lot of these episodes for my psych classes over the years. And this was like a mid 2000 show, I want 2007, 2008, somewhere in there. And the whole premise of the show was basically demonstrating the difference between how people said they would be able to act in a scenario versus how they actually acted, right? So, like, if you saw somebody leave a baby in a hot car, what would you do? If you saw somebody steal a bike, what would you do? If you saw somebody getting mugged, what would you do? And everyone always says, oh, well, I would do the really brave response. I would do the right thing. I would step in. I would call the police. I would fight the mugger off. I would run them down. I would do this, that, and the other thing. Do you know what happens in like every single fucking episode of that show? Do you guys know what happens in like all those episodes? People don't do shit. People do not do what they say they are capable of doing. It's the same phenomenon that causes guys to like believe that like they are capable of beating Serena Williams in tennis. Like, people have delusions and overconfidence in their own ability to act in a certain way. Now, for somebody with anxiety and like self-esteem issues, I'm assuming those numbers are different. But basically, people are like completely fucking sure, if that happened to me, I would do this. I know I would do this. There is no other thing that could happen. But it is very hard to know how you will react until you are in that situation. So do not fucking judge other people for their responses, because you do not, even if you think you do not accurately know what you would actually do in that scenario. Because you can act a certain way in certain scenarios that you think are related and do something different at a different time. If you are somebody that is very prone to like fisticuffs, like if you like you're the person who stuck up for the bullied kids on the playground, you know, somebody calls your kid your friend like you know, fucking gay or whatever as an insult, like them's fighting words. You're gonna fucking get those kids, aren't you? Gonna duck them. You might think, if somebody tried to SA me, I would deck them too. I would knock them out cold. I would do this, that, and the other. I've been doing kickboxing for 10 years. I'm this blah, blah, blah. Guess what? You can still freeze up during an assault. You can still not say no. You can still even have a flight response, maybe, right? Not necessarily freeze. You can have a flight response. So until you are in that particular scenario, it is really hard to say definitively whether or not you would definitely be able to say no and definitely fight them off. And I think it's really upsetting that other people that have not experienced SA have the expectations on... This is not pre-recorded, this is live. I am live right now. Hello, everyone. It's going to be technically pre-recorded later if somebody watches this later, and so that would be a lie. So unless it's like, it's just really gross to me that people that have not experienced SA, and even people who have, actually, if you're a victim that victim blames, that's like the lowest of the low to me. Because it's like, fuck you putting down other victims. I had to deal with that all the time with the Marilyn Manson stories, where like I'd have people that would come in my comments and they would be like, excuse me, as a real victim, I know that I like people who are victims, who are real victims, never do stuff like this. And it's like, shut the fuck up. Your abuser probably wasn't a fucking millionaire international rock star. Like, the circumstances are different, the things that happened are different, and just because people handle things differently doesn't invalidate their experience as a victim. Shut the fuck up, sit down, get out of my comment section, I will fight you. Again, my fight response has been going since 8 p.m. last night. So, if anybody does some shit in the comments, I will fight them. In a constructive way, with words. It's so easy for everyone to say what they would do. Well, and it's so easy to be like, I would do this differently than this person, right? Like, everyone thinks if I just was CEO of the world, I would solve all the problems. And it's like, no, you fucking wouldn't. So in any case, people are very inaccurate with these things. And the thing that I really was annoyed with in this is the compression of all instances of saying no into one level of thing. You missed 3 pages of my rant. You missed discussion of responses to assault, the numbers behind people that are assaulted, how they're assaulted, casual versus intimate relationships. You missed a lot of stuff, but don't worry, it's available later, so you can always rewind. everyone, like, this, the thing that, like I noticed was happening that, like, people weren't noticing they were doing is they were compressing all instances of saying no into basically being the same thing. And that's not true. There's different levels of difficulty to how hard it is to say no. So if you're in a situation where somebody, like, you're you know, even taking a scenario where sex is actively happening, it's very different for someone to be like, hey, I want to try this new thing. Are you cool with that? And ask for your consent and give you an active opportunity to say no, versus trying to say no to someone who is already now actively doing something that you previously said no to already without checking in with you and without telling you that it's happening. You know, things where it's like, you know, he took the condom off without telling me and I didn't notice until later, or she poked a hole in the condom and I didn't notice until I came. Like, situations. What is happening outside? Just like dogs making weird noises outside. That was distracting. But like, you can have scenarios where, like, somebody's actively asking for your no, right? They want your consent. They're being good affirmative consent people. We love to see it. Scenarios where somebody is trying to sneakily do something without your consent, and then you don't find out they did that thing until later, and so you're never even given an opportunity to say it no because you don't notice the thing happening. Or someone brazenly doing a thing you told them not to, and they're doing it anyway, and basically, like, testing to see if they will get resistance. So those saying no in all of those scenarios is different. For me, if you're going to ask me as an individual person, not as a sex educator that has the scientific data on this, I think that you are ready to safely engage in partnered sex if you feel comfortable giving a no when someone asks for your consent, and being able to check in and tell people, hey, like, because some people don't maliciously try to get away with stuff. Sometimes they just forget to check in, or they forget to, like, ask for consent. And instead of being malicious dickwads, they just, like, forget. If you can say no when someone asks you for your consent, and you can be like, hey, like, we didn't agree to that, can you not do that? Like, that is what I think you need to be able to do, if it feels safe to do it. If it's a dangerous situation where, like, a guy might, or gal for that matter, might crush your head in, like, fucking do what you need to do to live. I do not have any moral grandstanding ideas that good victims need to do XYZ thing. The thing that keeps your ass alive at the end of the day was the right fucking thing to do, as far as I'm concerned. Other than that, I have absolutely zero interest in policing how other people respond to threats of violence. Why would I need to have that information? All right. Whew. We're taking a breath here for a second. And yeah, when somebody's already shown a reckless disregard for your safety and has already been like, hey, I'm going to do this thing and not check in with you, and I'm just going to keep doing it, and they show a callous disregard for you, saying no in that scenario becomes much harder, because now it's like, oh, this person doesn't respect me. If they don't respect me, then what else could they be capable of doing in order to get the thing that they want? This is something I think was really common with the accusations against Dave Portnoy, actually, who I talked about at the very beginning of the stream, owner of the Barstool Sports Media Company, guy in his mid-40s, initiated sexual contact with women in, the 18, 19, 20-year-old age demographic, college students, really young college students, had them come out to his LA mansion. They had consensual vanilla sex that he escalated into non-consensual kinky sex. He broke a person's ribs in the process of doing this at one point. He would drag women across the carpet. He would pin them against walls. He would choke them to the point of blacking out. They were alone. They were away from home. They were at his house, actually, more particularly. They were in his domain. He's a rich, wealthy, powerful guy. If he is willing to break your ribs and tear up your back, dragging you along rough carpet to have sex with you, would a normal person, not knowing anything else, feel safe saying no in that situation and feeling confident that they wouldn't, or just get injured worse, right? Because if you struggle, then maybe that's playing along. Maybe he wants you to struggle so he can hurt you harder, right? Maybe that's part of the game for him. This is something I think the early Ted Bundy murders, I want to say, or there's one serial killer where what one of the victims did is they essentially didn't give him any response. And so that like killed it for him. Like he wanted victims that would scream and cry and carry on and fight back. And then when this person didn't do that, he just wasn't interested anymore. I feel like something is on my, I feel like I smeared lip gloss on my face. So before I continue to embarrass myself with that, let me check how my face looks and fix that if necessary. Oh, yeah. Lip gloss, little mistake. All right, let me fix that for a second. Yes, so stealthing is when the person, typically a man, but the person with the penis, who removes a condom during sex where the sex was consented to under the premise that the sex would include the use of condoms. The thing with lip gloss is it's hard to get a smooth border. Alright, that feels like that looks better. Well, don't spill my lip gloss everywhere. Don't do that. You remember the era of makeup where everyone was trying to have the most lurid makeup possible, makeup names possible? They'd be like, yes, this is my the NARS orgasm blush. This is the Better Than Sex mascara. This is the fucking Shibari palette. You guys remember that? That was a wild time, wasn't it? Fucking horny makeup. Listen, I don't kink shame, but I do shame makeup companies that try to make horny makeup. I do shame that. Ooh, boba tea sounds really good, actually. I will probably stick with hot tea though, because it's just more suited to this time of year. What lip gloss is it? It is the Give Me Glow lip gloss in XXX, which is what reminded me of the slutty horny makeup names. It's just a black lip gloss. I was like, let's try wearing this on stream because I don't want to put on liquid lipstick today because I just didn't want to. Here you go. And I have their black primer on my eyes, which I think is creasing, which I don't love, but anyways. Makeup shame. We do shame makeup here. Yes, the sex-proof flogger mascara. I almost forgot about that. It was forgettable. Jeffree Star really thought he did something with that. That's so awful. Oh my gosh. I'm not going to read your thing out, Mommy Zombie. I'm just going to say that I read your message and that is awful, and reproductive coercion is a real thing and is serious, and people do not recognize it enough. Wasn't there an incident that happened somewhere where one was being essayed on a public train and no one on the train did anything? I don't know if that story was real or not. But I will say that when I was looking up research on how to prevent violent escalation of sexual assault, almost 98% of the articles I found about it, 98% of the studies, advice columns, etc., they weren't about how you should prevent your SA from violently escalating, which is the advice I was looking for, but the bystander process of stepping in and preventing an SA from getting worse. So it is a known problem. People are reluctant to step in. It is the bystander effect. It's fucking second week of Psych 101 group psychology introduction type stuff. It's a very well-known effect, and a lot of people are reluctant to step into situations like that. So that's not surprising. All right. This is going to be a long stream. I'm sorry. I'm trying my best to get through this. We're getting through the bad numbers, and we're getting into the good advice part, I promise. Okay, so stealthing. You remember stealthing at the beginning, the thing I talked about where people remove condoms non-consensually during sex when the reason that sex was consented to was because condoms were happening? Remember that? So remember how I mentioned that stealthing is only legal in California? It is technically illegal by law in Germany and the UK. They both have explicit laws now against stealthing. Both very recent. There are some existing court cases now in Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, which basically set the precedent that you could be charged for sexual assault on the basis of stealthing. However, they don't have an explicit law, like, nationally. Or at least I think Australia has one provincial case law, and I can't remember what Canada or New Zealand, but there are some court verdicts in those other places that indicate that you could be tried for sexual assault if you stealth someone. However, lots of other types of consent violation, not just stealthing, are not against the law. So even in places, for example, where like you cannot consent to grave bodily harm, most cases of SA that involve the use of BDSM are not considered to be prosecutable because a lot of people will consent to sex. They might consent to kinky sex, but they might not consent to the specific acts within the kinky sex. And prosecuting that, finding evidence for that, proving to a judge and a jury that you know, oh, I consented to this but not to this, all of that is very difficult. Court cases, the legal process are re-traumatizing. They are expensive. They are time-consuming. They can take years. And so essentially, I wouldn't say that it not being illegal emboldens offenders, because people who are going to offend are pretty much going to offend. But they know that they can get away with these behaviors. If you're having consensual sex with someone and then you stealth them, you can be pretty confident that they're probably not going to call the police. If they do, you're probably not going to get arrested. If you get arrested, you're probably not going to go to jail. If you go to jail, you're probably not going to get tried. Like, it's because these issues are not recognized. A lot of people are able to repeatedly, as a pattern, get away with these fringe behaviors, even if the person says no. So you can say no and say, hey, don't do that. You shouldn't have stealthed me. Put the fucking condom back on. Like, it doesn't matter at that point if you say no, because the thing that, like, you might prevent yourself from being further violated, but legally, it doesn't matter because it's not against the law, which is really fucked up, and it should be against the law. And thank God California did something, because maybe other states might eventually get their ass in gear when they're done deciding whether or not we're going to continue a rent moratorium. You know? And people wonder why we as a community stress consent to the point we have negotiated checklists. You know, I do not want to give anybody the idea that consent checklists will save you from prosecution. Having a contract will not save you from legal repercussions. Those kinds of contracts are not considered to be in any way legally enforceable, though they may be admitted of, like in an SA case, if you have a text message that says, like, you know, explicitly, like, hey, I, you know, like, can't wait for whatever, right? Like, if you have some evidence of establishing consent for a particular thing and not other things, that might contribute, but, like, generally speaking, as, like, a contract is an enforceable thing, it's not enforceable. Having a written contract that says, I agree to do this thing, does not save you from being prosecuted, so just be aware of that. So why does all this fucking shit happen? Why are we so bad at consent? Why? That's really the question, isn't it? Why? Well, my dear friends, my dear viewers, We do not live in a consent-focused culture. You might even say, if this is 2014 SJW YouTube, you might even say we live in a rape culture. I am not going to say that because I think the problem is much wider and much worse than rape. And I do not want to minimize the other grave affecting experiences that can happen to people other than rape, because even if you are not raped, things that happen to you sexually against your will can carry forward into the rest of your life and cause very expensive trauma that will need to be fixed in therapy if you can't afford it or decide that you want to. So, yes, entitlement is certainly a factor. So, especially if you are socialized as a woman growing up, it is very standard for you to be taught to be compliant. That it is your job to keep the peace, to not make a scene, to not take up space, to be nice. All of those things are considered good feminine values. And so you're taught to be those things and to not take up too much space. And from a very, very young age, that is a messaging you get about the way that you should act. Also, alongside that, from a very young age, a lot of people have their boundaries violated in small ways that family members do not even consider to be boundary violations. Really good example of this is being forced to hug and kiss family members that you don't like. Or maybe you have a family friend and they have a kid that's a similar age to you. Oh my God, parents love taking cute Facebook photos of like their opposite gender kids kissing and being like, oh my God, I can't wait for them to date. And like basically what that's teaching kids is that the people that should be the most important in their lives do not respect their boundaries. I think, and also, let's be fucking real here. If you are forcing your child to kiss or hug a family member they don't like, and you do not investigate why that child does not like that adult family member, or even an older kid or someone else, you are potentially missing the fucking most obvious sign that you could ever be given that a family member is manipulating, assaulting, or grooming a child. Let's just get that out there. Please, if you have a kid, if you have a niece, if you have a nephew, if anyone in your life that's a small child and if they do not want to have contact with a certain family member and they're very resistant to it, there's probably a good fucking reason to it. The opposite can also be true as well. If family members are being very, very unusually overly affectionate with a child, that can also be a sign as well. I'm not going to get into the signs of child stuff for the minute, but just know that I just want to get that side note out there because a lot of people don't like connect the dots on that, and I feel like it's really necessary because particularly if like grooming and stuff is happening in families, is either already totally normalized or it's super, super well hidden and you may not notice a lot of obvious signs that it's happening. So, you know, tickling is the #1 consent violation against kids. Yes, thank you. I forgot to put that one on the list because I was not I'm not ticklish, actually. I think I was tickled as a child. I'm not ticklish now. I don't know what the fuck that means. Maybe my body is so anxious that I'm unable to be surprised via tickling at this point. I don't know. But yes, because kids say, no, please stop, don't. And they may mean it in a playful way. But by continuing to do it and continuing to tickle them, even when they obviously don't want it, that is also a consent/boundary violation. So, moving on from stuff involving kids, as kids get older and they are introduced to sex education, if they get it at all, which is a big if, right? Usually the focus of that education as a young adult in a school system is like, here's how you get AIDS. This is what STIs look like. Teen pregnancy is bad and will ruin your life forever. Don't have sex. That is what teenage sex education looks like. There is typically either very little or no mention of how to navigate sexual relationships, look for red flags, establish boundaries, how to say no, what good consent looks like. None of that's talked about. Because if you did that, you would have to acknowledge that some kids are not going to follow abstinence-only education. And so you can't even broach the subject, because if you do that, you're going to ruin the whole idea that good girls don't have sex until marriage, right? Good girls aren't sluts in high school. How about we don't slut-shame 14-year-olds? That sounds like a thing that could make our society better. Anyways, people are not taught even things like, again, relationship red flags. They're not even necessarily taught different types of sex acts, right? A lot of schools do not teach about anal sex, because anal sex is for gay people, and gay people are bad, and gay people get AIDS because of anal, and so we can't talk about anal. It is true, because of the nature of anal sex, that AIDS, or HIV rather, transmission is higher with anal sex. However, that does not mean we shouldn't teach kids that anal sex exists, or that oral sex exists, or that hand jobs exist, or that intercourse exists, or whatever, or sex toys exist, or whatever. Like, there's lots and lots of different types of sex that are not talked about, and so things can happen that especially young adults don't even know what they are, and they don't even know if they should say yes or no to them, because they have no idea what the fuck it is. And they maybe don't want to seem like they don't know what they're talking about, or that they're prude or inexperienced. And so when somebody says, hey, can I go down on you? And they don't know what the fuck that means, because they went to a Christian high school and were homeschooled for their whole lives, they're going to be like, yeah, okay. And then they might say yes to something they don't even know what it is, because they were not given the appropriate education. And then they're not also taught how to deflect, or detect, rather, coercion and manipulation. Which are really, really big things. And so a lot of people have this idea of like abusers and assaulters in their heads. And it's so funny to me, because I think we simultaneously have this idea in society of like abusers and assaulters being these like, it's always like a 50-year-old overweight white guy and a wife beater drinking beer in like a rundown house with like a rabbit-eared television. And he's like, hey, bitch, get me another beer. And that's what people think assaulters and abusers look like. When in reality, anyone can be an abuser, regardless of age, gender, sexual experience, anything. Anyone can be an abuser. And when you are not able, oh, I'll have the super chat to play.
Very interesting and entertaining smiley face.
I am glad that you are entertained by this. I am revved up. So, yes. So people think that assaulters and abusers look a certain way. And so they get this false idea, if they avoid certain people, that this person can't be abusive to me because they don't look like the stereotype I have in my head, which is not true. But it's very funny, because at the same time, y'all might remember the West End Caleb story that went around on Twitter and TikTok for a little while there, for a couple days. Essentially, it was a guy that was a serial ghoster on dating apps that would like have one night stands with girls, and the sex was consensual and all that stuff, but then he would like not talk to them or not respond quickly. And people look at that and decided that he is a serial abuser, covert narcissist, because he doesn't text women back after a first date. And so you both have these very like extreme abuse and assault only happens way over here thing, and also any kind of fuckboy behavior makes you a serial abuser. So in both instances, we become invisible to the reality of what constitutes abuse and assault, because both ends of the extreme are too extreme. If everything is this and nothing is this, we never have any clear answers to help anybody, right? And on top of this, right, on top of the messaging from family members, on top of the messaging from schools, you have good old-fashioned popular media. What I thought was really interesting is something I've noticed from my videos I've done on 50 Shades of Grey, and then on, not just 50 Shades of Grey, but on like choking and, kinky fantasies and things like that. A lot of people, I read all of the books, by the way. I've read all of the books. I watched all the movies. I do not remember any instances in any of those books or any of the movie adaptations of choking. But a lot of people went, oh, 50 Shades of Grey, that's the reason why people are into choking now. Unless I've forgotten something, which could happen. I have blocked out certain memories from that era. Unless people are remembering something I don't remember, 50 Shades of Grey doesn't actually contain any choking in it. So you can't really blame that for the rise in choking because it's not something that's in the media. But there are lots of other forms of media. The Bond movies, for example, especially the really early Bond movies. Ooh, terrible. Terrible representations of consensual interactions there. Romance novels, erotica, porn in general. Especially sort of the clickhole 18 plus and abused type of porn. People go to those things because, well, one, because they're hot, right? They're appealing. They like those things. They're fun to watch, whatever else. But they learn what having sex looks like from that because previous to exposure to those things, they were not taught how sex happens. They might be taught, this is a penis, this is a vagina, they do this, and and then a baby happens, right? You might be taught that, but you might not learn, how do I ask a woman if she wants to have sex with me? How do I say no to a man? And especially those older movies, some of which have maintained great cultural relevance over the years. You have the classic of the woman being expected socially to say no and resist and say, oh no, I couldn't possibly, oh no, get away from me, you monster, blah, blah, blah. But eventually they're overtaken by the leading man who sweeps them up and gives them a big kiss and leans them down into the hay bales and the fucking barn. And it turns out the woman secretly wanted the man the whole time, but she couldn't. She had to say no, because if she didn't say no, it would be violating her honor or whatever, right? And so people get this idea in their heads that, like, saying no doesn't really matter anyways, because when somebody says no, they don't mean it. When somebody says no, it's foreplay. When somebody says no, it's because they want to be taken. And no. No. That is not the case. No means no. You can establish in advance, consensually, that you can say no for play, but in general, no should fucking mean no. All of these things all together are reinforced in adulthood by people like relationship coaches, pickup artists, manosphere people, that basically take that same idea that, women want rough sex universally. Women like being taken. Asking ruins the moment. Asking for consent makes you look like a dweeb or whatever. And so unless you are somebody that is on purpose seeking out good, accurate information about sexual interactions, or you're part of alternative sex practices like you're polyamorous or you're kinky or whatever, like, you're not going to be exposed to better information. And all of that entire fucking paragraph I just went you is what contributes to this end point here where women don't feel comfortable saying no during sex. So if you're going to fucking blame a woman for not being able to say no during sex, you better be fucking addressing the rest of the list I just brought up. You better be thinking about, how can we teach kids age-appropriate ways to have their boundaries respected? Like, how can we teach parents to parent in a way that respects their children's boundaries? How can we incorporate consent into sex ed curriculum? How can we teach porn literacy? How can we incorporate the how of sex into our sex ed? How can we fix the way that media shows representations of sex? How can we deplatform fucking pickup artists that basically say that rape is good and we should all go back to arranged marriages? Like, if you are not thinking about all of the other 25 fucking steps that takes us to having a society where this is the thing we're critiquing, like, look at all the other shit, okay? Because it's never just a woman can't say no in isolation. It's never independently, apropos of nothing else. She's like, magically, for some reason, I can't say no. Like, there's fucking reasons for that. It is not a moral failing on your personal part for feeling nervous during sex and never having been taught how to establish a boundary. Literally my entire channel is about BDSM. I don't know what people, there's definitely people who are watching, I assume, who have no idea who the heck I am. We are at 169 viewers, so hey, that's the that's the magic number. Can you tell me more about BDSM? I would love to. We definitely don't have time on this stream. That is my whole channel though, so if you want to, you should check out my other videos. Yep, resistance rom-com stuff is it is tiring. I do agree. Choking came out in some episodes of Rain season 1 and the representation is so bad I felt like slapping the writers. You know. What are you gonna do, right? We should just cancel all sex in TV shows until people can figure out how to write sex scenes responsibly. Yeah, a lot of stuff is just shown off as romantic. One fun part in Rising Sun is when an essay investigation thing, a woman says sometimes no means yes because the guy stopped and everyone just stares at her. It was a thing. Like, it's still a thing now. And I get, like, in the 50s and stuff like that and earlier, I get why. And it's because, like, a woman having some kind of sexual desire was, like, criminal. And so the only way that you could, like, get around having sex was just to play at saying no. But, like, we've evolved beyond that as a culture. We have Tinder now. If we don't have good consent practices, how can we have Tinder? Why should that be an app we're allowed to have as a society? Story time. SP asked me while we were having sex, want to finish me off, and I begged, come in me please. He said, are you sure? And I begged over and over again, yes, come in me please. Consent can be sexy. It can. People, and I have a whole video about this. It's called, can consent be sexy? It can be. Consent does not have to ruin the moment. Consent does not have to kill the mood. Consent does not have to make you sound like a dork that doesn't know what you want. It is entirely possible for things to be consensual and also be hot and empowering and make the sex better. And if you can't figure out how to do that, sounds like a you problem. Sounds like a you problem. All right, I swear to God, we are fucking so. We got one more. We got one big bullet point left for this, and then we got the advice on how to have safer sex practices. Are you guys ready to learn how to do better? Are you ready for the pain to be over and the relief of knowing how to do good things? You guys ready? I'm ready. I'm so excited. People are morally bankrupt sometimes. Opinions on hookups. I'll talk about that. I don't think that anything is wrong with consensual casual sex or hookups. I think there is an elevated risk for a lot of things. In particular, STI transfer and to a lesser extent, non-consensual sexual interactions. I don't think there's a problem with it as long as what's happening is consensual and it's being done sober. And I didn't mention this in the outline, but the number one risk factor for experiencing SA as part of a casual sex interaction is alcohol and drug use. In the advice section, I'll talk about this, but just to reiterate it now for people that maybe won't be around when I talk about that, if you want to prevent SA during a casual sex encounter, do not do the sexual encounter while drinking or at a place that involves drinks. A lot of people that are serial, not abusers, but sexual assaulters, people that are serial perpetrators, they take advantage of the intersection of casual sex, the desire for sexual inhibition, and the use of alcohol to make people more compliant and to get them drunk enough to where either they can't say no or they would say yes to more things. So if you want to stay safe, one of the best ways you can do that is not engaging in casual sexual encounters that involve the use of drugs and alcohol. That is my own opinion. Obviously, I cannot stop you from, having a casual beer or a glass of wine on a first date and then deciding to have sex. That's your own call as a fully grown-ass adult that can legally drink. And I just want to give you the things that I know that can help keep you safe. Take or leave that information as you will. It's your fucking life, you know? All right, so the number one question, the thing everyone was talking about, the thing everybody on my Twitter replies was saying was, well, if you're somebody that has a freeze response, keep in mind 70% of the people, if you have a freeze response or you can't say no during sex, you are an unsafe person to engage in sex with and you shouldn't be having sex. All right. I have been talking for 2 hours, so that's going to happen occasionally. So, is that true? Does having a freeze response make you an unsafe person to have sex with? Should you abstain from sex if you're a person that knows you freeze response in confrontational situations, etc.? So here's my 2 cents on that, which I do not even deign to give authoritative information on this answer. This is based on the research that I have done. I would really like to be able to talk to an expert in this field on an answer to this question to give a more refined response, because I do think it is warranted, but based on the limited things that I could find and my own personal feelings about the matter. This is a very complicated issue, and unfortunately, honest questions about like, how safe is it to have sex if you feel like you're unable to say no, get tangled up in a lot of victim blaming and a lack of like trauma awareness, because you never hear people like out of nowhere, just because they want to promote good sex, say, you know what, if you feel uncomfortable saying no, are you a safe person to have sex with? Like, no one ever like brings it up. It's always like, this person didn't act like a perfect victim, let's turn this into a way that we can say other things about them and complain about their behavior and blame them for their own trauma and basically tell them they're not allowed to have a fun consensual thing that brings a lot of joy to a lot of people ever again because one time somebody else violated their consent. Like, and also, can we just examine, like, internally as a culture, everyone, isn't it fucking weird that when we have conversations about this, the question we ask is somebody who had their consent violated and wasn't able to say no or had a freeze response, should they be allowed to have sex again? As opposed to what I think is the more pertinent question, which is somebody that is a serial or a potential serial perpetrator, how do we change their behavior or intercept them so they no longer engage in this behavior? I feel like that's the more pertinent question, but that's not the direction anyone ever seems to go on. So it is true for people that have had a freeze response during sexual assault, that they are more likely to have a freeze response in the future. That is true. Navigating consensual sex as a survivor can be very difficult. I am not here to judge anybody's personal journey on that. Only you and your mental health support structure, if you seek their advice on this in particular, can determine when you are ready or when you feel ready to seek out sexual contact again, if ever. Right? Not strangers on the internet, not fucking me, not anyone else except for you and your brain and your mental health support system can tell you if you think that you're ready or not again. Having a freeze response once does not mean you are no longer able to establish boundaries or cannot say no to anything ever. And I really think what I have a problem with is conflating all those things together. And I think that's dangerous and it's also untrue. Because like we established earlier, right, a freeze response, in the clinical sense of the term freeze response, is an automatic physiological response to a flood of cortisol that happens when responding to a high stress situation. It is not something you have control over. However, just because you have a freeze response to that high stress scenario doesn't mean that you don't know how to establish boundaries. It doesn't mean you don't know what your limits are. It doesn't mean that you cannot say no to anything or couldn't say no if you were asked. And it doesn't mean that you would always have that same response. And thinking that that would be the case, that it's sort of like a one and done, if you ever have a freeze response, sex card revoked, like that is so fucking barbaric to me that I can't comprehend that is in any way the actual solution to this problem. And I'll talk about this in the solution section. There are ways to learn how to become comfortable with saying no. I am so not single that I'm polyamorous. I'm double not single. It reeks of ableism. Oh, totally. It's a very it's like okay, well now we're gonna the real infantilization, because the way this has been framed is that well, if you're saying that we shouldn't expect women to be able to say no, that means that you're infantilizing them because you think women are children that don't know what they want or not. And it's like, well, no, the real infantilization is believing that when you have an automatic body response you can't control, you deserve to no longer have sex again. And it was just the episode of SpongeBob, right? Does anyone know what I'm talking about? Okay, it's gonna not even. This is why I don't stream for this long normally. I get kind of zany when we get into the third hour. I don't even have the spoons for polyamory. It's hard enough having friends with benefits with one guy, lol. Listen, you know what? I'm super happy you know yourself well enough to know what you're capable of having the spoons for, and we love it. There is a certain point to it, but it means the upfront negotiation is very important. Not that no sex is allowed. And that's what I think what it really boils down to. If you want a genuine response that is not punishing someone for having been sexually assaulted, I think that the tool that is really good to use is upfront negotiation, and being as discretionary as you feel comfortable with. So if you feel comfortable, and you want to disclose, hey, these are my triggers. Hey, this is stuff I'm comfortable with, this is what I'm not comfortable with. You probably, as a natural course of having learned, you will probably take more time to feel out partners who probably, but this is the thing though, right? Is at the same time, everyone responds to trauma differently. Everyone has different responses to sexual assault. It is by no means in any way universal. Some people go in the direction of they never ever want to have sex again, and they become celibate, and they just never ever want to touch a subject again. Some people go the opposite way, and they become hypersexual as a response to SA. And they may even engage in either on purpose or unknowingly dangerous sexual behavior, and more dangerous sexual behavior as part of a maladaptive coping mechanism for dealing with trauma. And that needs to be recognized as part of this conversation, I feel like, because it is an area of trauma response that is very poorly understood by a lot of people. And when people do interact with it, if they know someone that has this, they tend to be very shamey about it, as opposed to recognizing it as part of the spectrum of possible responses to dealing with trauma. Okay, like I said, I don't really have a really big key answer to definitively. Because at the end of the day, I don't think you can make a definitive statement of if someone in the abstract, on average, is going to be safe to have sex with or not if they are somebody that has a freeze response. I think you could construct a scenario in which the person would be unsafe. I think you can construct a scenario in which they would be totally safe. But at the end of the day, it is a very individual process. And I do not have the authority, the knowledge, or the desire to police that for anyone else. And that is one of the things I do like about the BDSM community is a lot of people very much value education, negotiation, consent. All of that stuff is a default part of the educational experience before you can do anything. And I'm really, 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 really appreciative of that. And I think it does a lot of good. All right, so now we're on to the last part. We only have a page and a half left, guys. Oh my gosh, we're almost through it. Can you believe that? We're gonna get into the advice on having safer, intimate interactions. I think it's really shitty that the only time we have these conversations is when somebody comes out about their essay and people critique what they should have done and how they could have prevented this or how they should prevent it in the future. I think there should be an ongoing conversation. I think teaching people how to keep themselves safe, but then trusting them as adults to assess their own risk, I think that should be something that we just talk about all the time. Not only when we want to berate someone on Twitter for their choices. So, number one, we should establish, what does good consent look like? For me personally, the model of consent that I like, that I recommend to people, is the Fry's model. This was invented by Planned Parenthood, and it basically incorporates a lot of different ideas about what good consent looks like into one handy-dandy little abbreviation. Fry's stands for freely given, revocable, or reversible, informed, enthusiastic, and specific. As an ace person, I have a little bit of a problem with the enthusiastic as the term. I prefer like affirmative over enthusiastic, just because like enthusiastic implies like a hell yes or a super yes. And as an ace person, when I engage in sex with partners, my enthusiasm looks a little bit more like, yeah, sure, I can do that. Like, you know, for me, that's my enthusiasm most of the time. It's like, yeah, okay. Like, I'm not really into it. I'm not a hell yes, but I'm not a no either. And I think there needs to be room on that spectrum. But if you are engaging in consensual sex, especially maybe hooking up with somebody at a party you've never talked to before, enthusiasm becomes a lot more important. When you're in a committed, long-term, ongoing relationship where you know the person's asexual and things like, then the enthusiastic thing kind of is not as you know, you can have a wider spectrum of things that I think are okay, but enthusiastic I think is really good, in particular for like those more casual encounters, to really ensure that everyone's on the up and up, you know. So I think boundary setting is really good. If you remember from the very beginning of this, the drama that sparked this whole thing, the person said that they agreed to sex with condoms and then the person removed the condom later. They had established as a boundary beforehand that the sex needed to have condoms. Just a condom, really, because you shouldn't double bag condoms because it makes latex on latex, you know? But boundary setting beforehand is really important for two reasons. One, having explicit boundaries will make it more likely the things that you want to have happen, and the things you don't. Also, it is a very good way of keeping a record of the things that you agree to beforehand, in case anyone tries to do a little forgetful narcissist move and be like, oh, well, I thought you wanted this. I thought blah, blah, blah. It can be good for keeping records of things. So for boundary setting, for casual sex in particular, I really advocate for meeting up, or at least talking over something like maybe Zoom perhaps, you know, make sure you're not going to get catfished. Before actually having the sex meeting, have a different meeting where you have an explicit conversation about what you are and are not comfortable with. It could be something where you meet up at a coffee shop and then you go to a hotel room after you're done, right? And you do the thing. But it should be a specific conversational space to work out how the sex is going to happen. That would include conversations like condom usage, of course, right? STI results. Do you have results? When was the last time you got them done? Have you ever gotten them done? What sort of safer sex practices have you done with other partners? When was the last time you had unprotected sex? Those kinds of things, especially if you're going to be engaging in like regular casual sex. STI results are really important. Getting tested often is important. A lot of people unknowingly and invisibly are spreading a lot of shit they don't know they have because it is invisible for a lot of people. Also talk about the types of sex you want to have. Anal, oral, vaginal, manual stimulation, outer course, sex toys, etc. Also, this is a big thing a lot of people miss. What is the energy of the sex you want to have, right? You know, if it's a casual hookup, loving romantic sex, unless you're doing some kind of role play shit, probably not on the table. But do you want vanilla sex? Do you want kinky sex? Do you want to have like very passionate, very like kissy, lots of hugging, touchy-feely, you know, spend time in a hot bath in a hotel room before you have sex kind of sex. Like, talk about the energy of sex you want to have. If you can, like I said before, keep a record of the conversation in some way. Doing this over text message is good. I do recommend meeting in person because you want to make sure the person passes the vibe check. Have time for the vibe check prior to the other vibe check, you know? And if you can, if you can't keep a record of it, keep some kind of recollection of the agreements as soon as possible. Keep it in a notes app on your phone, do an audio recording to yourself, do whatever it is, but keep some kind of record of it in case somebody in the future tries to tell you that you agreed to something that you didn't actually agree to. That is a really common method of people that want to try and get away with things, is that they will tell you, oh, no, we totally talked about that. You said it was totally fine. You never fucking talked about it. Keeping a record is not necessarily going to clinch anything legally. It is for your own, basically, prevention of gaslighting. You can also do this where you basically send confirmation to the person over, if you're going to be like doing a meeting and then having time in between and then doing the sex. It can be a good idea to have like a separate, like, basically like, hey, from what I remember, we talked about condom usage and, we shared STI results, and I'm super excited for Friday night and I can't wait to do whatever these things you're going to do, right? Like, kind of just check in with the person in between, if there is an in between, just to confirm that everything is mutually remembered, so no one can get the like, oh, hey, sorry, I didn't remember you said that thing. Right? Because that was a thing I heard from like Destiny during some of the debates he did about this, or the debate he did about this. He would basically say, oh, well, men are expected to remember everything and remember all of their agreements and keep, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, there's a concept when people are talking about narcissists, which is basically malicious forgetting, where they basically say that they've forgotten something they haven't really forgotten in order to get their way. And I'm not saying that everyone needs to have perfect memory. An honest mistake is an honest mistake. There are things you can do to prevent honest mistakes, as well as catch someone in a lie. So, all of that is what I would say about boundary setting in terms of like the things you would want to set boundaries around. Make sure that your language is firm. Make sure you're being direct. If only because, and I'll talk about this yet again, more in a second, is I think a lot of people have a tendency to be very wishy-washy, especially when they are attracted to a person because they don't want to lose the opportunity to have sex with someone. So what they'll do is they'll go, oh, yeah, that's like, I'm cool with that, I guess. And they'll give really wishy-washy answers to things that are actually a definite no. It is better for you to be definite in your likes and dislikes, because if somebody reacts really poorly to you setting up firm boundaries, that is the fucking biggest red flag. Like if somebody's like, oh, I thought you were, I don't know, fucking, I don't even know what they would say. I don't know. I thought that's not very ladylike of you. I don't know what they would say. Some dumb shit like that. That's not even like, don't believe it. If somebody says something like that, don't believe it. Disrespecting consent is not a vibe. You're right. Ooh. I'm gonna scratch my forehead with my nail there. Okay, so consent, boundary setting, step 3. Look for red flags and check your gut. So, like I said, from the data that we do have about the risk factors for SA in casual encounters, we do have some information about the factors that make the likelihood of assault more likely. So be careful of people that are really overtly sexually dominant. By that, I would mean people that are pickup artists, people that are far alt-right types, people that are, manosphere types, red pillar people, whatever label they use. People that like have fundamental beliefs about like the dominance of man, and that a man takes what he wants and man gets what he wants. Like if a guy speaks in that language or has that kind of like language or attitude in like a dating profile, that's probably a red flag. Anyone that's really pushy and thinks that pushing is being dominant is wrong, but they do act that way. Anyone that is drinking or using drugs heavily or wants to go to a place where drinking and or drug use will be heavily encouraged. Look out for people that push you to meet ASAP or use drugs or alcohol with them prior to engaging in sex. Again, different if you're on a first date and you have a glass of wine with dinner. That is very different than being like, yeah, come to the club with me, and then they keep buying you drinks and they keep getting you shots, and then they maybe take a sip and then toss it out, and then they get you another drink, and then they're having you drink a lot, but then they're somehow suspiciously being able to stay much sober because they can really hold their drink. That's a big red flag. Big red flag. People that push to meet really, really soon without really having any conversations about sex, having any kind of boundary setting, that is definitely a red flag. Because I don't want to get into the they only want one thing kind of language, but if they are not they're not taking the time to get to know you as a potential sex partner, and they just want to get to any kind of sex at all, they probably don't care as much about your well-being as they should. Be really cautious around people that in particular have what I would call flippant behavior on casual sex. I don't think that having casual sex is a bad thing. I don't think that having hookups is a bad thing. I don't think doing that makes you a bad person. However, the way that you act about that casual sex says a lot about you. So there's a person that can enjoy casual sex, but get regular STI testing, respect the people that they have sex with, be clear about their own boundaries, be clear about when relationships are over, that behave in casual sex in an ethical way. There are also people that engage in casual sex that do not do it in anything approaching a appropriate way, right? If they talk really disrespectfully about past partners, right? They complain that so-and-so wouldn't do something with them. They complain that everyone's like a bitch and there's too much drama and whatever else, right? Like that kind of language is definitely a red flag. If they're not forthcoming about STI results, or they're really resistant to getting STI testing because, of course, I'm clean, what are you trying to say about me? If somebody is regularly engaging in casual sex, unless for some reason there is a lack of ease, like if there's an access issue to getting testing, which, in certain parts of the world, in certain parts of the country, is harder to get like regular STI testing that's like a full panel. I get that. But in general, if they're like dismissive of the concept of STI testing, that usually indicates that they don't care about spreading stuff. They don't care about getting stuff. They don't care about the health and safety of the people they're having sex with. Because STI results are about you, but they're also about other people. Evaluate how they feel about consent, right? If you're having a conversation and you're talking about what you will do and won't do, or what you want to do or whatever, if they disregard like consent culture and consent as something that like ruins the mood, right? That's a red flag. Or maybe instead, are they like actively engaged in that conversation about consent? And do they, want to know what you like, and they are interested in how to make you comfortable? That's a green flag. That's a good thing. Check how they respond to you setting boundaries, right? Are they happy to agree to condom usage? And they're like, okay, yeah, sure. Or do they complain that like, condoms make it feel worse? My dick's too big for a condom. I'm allergic to latex. I can't wear condoms. Don't make me wear a condom. There's solutions for all of that. They make condoms in lots of sizes, and there are easily accessible, sometimes free, latex-free condoms. You can get them at literally any fucking grocery store, any pharmacy will have latex-free condoms. If they are being very coercive and pushy about a boundary that you establish and insisting that you should be comfortable with doing something anyways because it's something that they really like, that is a big red flag. How engaged are they? In asking questions about you? Do they ask what you want? Do they ask what you are comfortable with? Do they check to see what your boundaries are? Or are they basically approaching it like they are playing a game and trying to get the most out of you as possible? Another good thing you can do during the process of boundary setting, or otherwise negotiating for sex, is practice saying no to them at some point. Practice saying no to them. Either, like, I guess if they say, like, oh, hey, are you into deep throating? Would you deep throat me? You can say, no, hey, I'm sorry, that's not really my thing. If they take that in stride, great. If they're just like, okay, then we won't do that. Perfect. If they're like, everyone does it these days, what's the big deal? Or like, don't be such a prude. Or like, oh, I guess I don't want to have sex with you then. Like, if they are, again, if they're acting pushy, if they are acting flippant, if they are acting like they don't care about what you want, red flag, red flag, red flag. So lots of ways that you can look for red flags in conversations about somebody's safety. People that are the worst types of serial abusers and manipulators are very, 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 very good at getting you into a comfortable position to make you say yes. And this is one of the feature differences between what I'll call generally coerced consent between casual sexual relationships and non-casual sexual relationships. So people that are looking to commit SA as part of a casual sex experience, they tend to go for the lavished praise method. They tend to go with the like, oh yeah, oh my gosh, you're so beautiful, you're so amazing, the most amazing woman ever. And they tend to really, really lay it on thick. Where and they might even say yes to whatever it is you want. They may even agree to whatever you want because they don't fucking care, right? They can say yes to anything. So be really cautious of people that are like really profuse with the praise, especially when you don't really know them that well, because that could actually be sort of a way to lure you into a false sense of security. When it comes to partnered interactions, that's when they tend to go for more for like the guilt, the shame. Oh, why don't you want to have sex with me? Stop blue balling me, blah, blah, blah. That kind of thing. Things to look out for. So, gut feelings. Oh my gosh. People don't think gut feelings are real, which I think is fascinating because I love my gut feelings. So people are taught oftentimes to ignore their gut feelings, or people choose to overlook them because they're looking for a way to feel comfortable saying yes. I don't know how to describe it other than that, but basically, they will overlook a gut feeling that says, hey, this doesn't feel right, because they're like really physically attracted to the person. Physical attraction is great. It will not keep your ass safe. Listen to your gut feeling, please. Now, gut feelings are not always entirely accurate. They can be wrong because what gut feelings are is it is a collection of your past experiences and knowledge that your brain is smushing into a little cheese ball, and it's sending the little cheese ball of knowledge into your conscious brain to be like, hey, think about this. We've made this observation. It's sending a book report to you about how all of the things you're experiencing now parallel other things you've experienced before. And cross-referencing them and being like, hey, we recognize this pattern and this pattern and this pattern. And sometimes that can be really good. Sometimes it can give you really good feelings about a person. And sometimes it's really fucking bad. So if you are noticing very strong gut feelings about a person not seeming right, somebody giving you off vibes, that's another good reason why meeting up and doing Zoom calls and things beforehand, before meeting for the sex, is a good idea. You want to do the vibe check. And you also want to make sure you're not being catfish, especially if you're having sex with women you've met on the internet. So I really, really encourage you to have that moment for a vibe check prior to getting to the place where you've negotiated to have sex. But it is a really, really good idea to check in with your gut feelings. Now, if you are somebody that has experienced especially repeated trauma, if you're somebody that's living with PTSD or CPTSD, your gut feelings can be miscalibrated, because it is a collection of your past experiences and knowledge. And when you have had a disproportional amount of negative experiences, instead of being here, your gut instinct can be here, right? It's trying to help you. It's trying to keep you safe. It's doing a good thing. It's saying, hey, look at this stuff. It can be a little too hardcore. And that would be a thing you'd have to work out with a mental health professional to help you realign those gut feelings to a more appropriate location. There's DBT skills you can use to help basically realign these gut feelings to a more accurate place. Check the facts is a really, really good thing. If you guys want to just Google DBT, check the facts. It's a really good, it's a couple of different skills kind of built together, but it is a really good way of helping kind of realign those gut feelings to be more accurate and evaluating both the feelings and the facts of a situation together to determine what is the appropriate response. Yes, my gut feelings may be overreactive but better than underreactive. Yes. I would say as well, if you've experienced something like a lot of trauma in your life, you have PTSD. It could also be the case that abusive behaviors are so normalized in your brain that you don't detect them as being dangerous. So it could be miscalibrated this way to overprotective. It could be miscalibrated to no longer able to determine when things are dangerous because things happen so often. So again, something to work out with a mental health professional, something to work on over time if you feel like you are miscalibrated in some direction. But gut feelings are something worth listening to and are worth evaluating and shouldn't be overlooked. Yes, and I agree. I think it is better to be overly cautious because here's the thing, right? Um, if you are overly cautious and you decide to not have sex with someone or go on a date with someone or whatever else because of those bad feelings, you might learn more information over time about the person that changes your reaction to them. And then at a later point, you might actually be safe and you might have enough of a trust level with them built up to where your analysis of them changes, or it turns out that they are a serial killer and you totally dodged a bullet. So, caution is good. And even if you take the approach of caution, it doesn't have to be a no permanently for forever. It can be a pause until you have more information. Okay. Is free use or the desire to be groped as a male recipient based in formative sexual or SA experiences? So for people who don't know what free use is, there's kind of two. I think this because it's one word. I think this person is referring to the first usage. So there's two things that can mean free use. Free use can be a concept in a total power exchange or MS relationship, where the master has free use over the slave partner and can have sex with them whenever they want. The other more common, like, porn subset of free use is like basically a world where like sex is completely normalized. It's treated like handshaking, and you can just kind of go up and have sex with like anyone you want at any time, and it's not a big deal, and people are into it. Um, I do not want to make the implication that SA causes fetishes or is the reason why people are into BDSM. Based on the research that I have read, people that have experienced SA are not any more likely to be kinky than those that have not. However, there are definitely some people that feel like their current kink interests or their fetishes they have are connected to certain experiences they had in which their consent was violated. It can be a tool that people choose to use to regain power mentally over things that happen to them. It can be a certain type of consensual coping mechanism, but I wouldn't paint with a broad brush and say that's why people like it. Yes, it can be a trauma response, but so can a lot of sexual activities, fetishes, kinks. Yes, it can be. I do not want to overstate it to the point of implying that it is the reason. Because like sexual fetishes and things come from a million different places. If you are somebody that, is going through your formative sexual years and you're first starting to develop a sexual response cycle, your brain can develop connections between like, um, the thing you were thinking about when you were coming, and like basically just like you were thinking about this scene in your head when you had an orgasm the first time when you were 14 or whatever. And part of that was the lady was tied up, right? And so maybe the next time you have sex because it felt good, you also think about the lady being tied up. And like you do that enough over time, repeatedly, and like that can develop into a sexual fetish. Some fetishes, particularly body part fetishism, like feet and like armpits and things like that, can be linked, at least theoretically, to structural differences in the brain and basically confusion in your brain between like genitals and different body parts, and basically thinking of a non-sexual body part as a sexual body part. There's lots and lots of different theories about why different people have different fetishes and interests and how those things develop, and I think a lot of them are true to varying degrees. Yes. Correlation does not equal causation. It is true. It is very true. Gut feelings are underrated and overlooked mainly because they think they can't be logically explained. This is why I really wish everyone like knew the basics of DBT, because I think, especially if you are on like male-centric internet culture, if you are in debate culture, if you are just anywhere near a lot of that stuff, the way that a lot of people talk about and think about feelings is that feelings are dumb, feelings are wrong, feelings should not be listened to, feelings are incorrect, feelings will lead you to the wrong conclusion. We evolved feelings for a reason. You think our brains are just hanging on to shit that's not beneficial to us? Our bodies are optimized to be lazy. Like, our body does not want to spend energy and matter on things that do not help us survive. Part of that is having feelings. Feelings give us very important information about the world that we might not be able to logically discover. It is the fusion of feelings and logic and thinking together as a unit that create the wise mind that gives us typically the most likely correct interpretation. It's never just feelings, it's never just thinking and logic. Both things have to work together in order to discover what the optimal reaction is, or discover what the optimal thing to do is. I'm not somebody that believes in like a singular truth. I do not think there is like a singular, definitive, objective reality that everyone can logically determine and all come to the same agreement on. Because I think what we perceive as reality is dependent on our individual experiences. Anyways, wow, I've just gone off on a rant about metaphysics? I don't know. All right, guys. Let me look at where we're at here. Okay, so let's talk about other ways you can keep yourself physically safe and maybe help prevent some instances of assault and listen into all the good things, right? So one, meet in public first. Really, really, really good idea. Meet in public first. Have your own transportation. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have to drive, but you should have bus fare, have a phone charged with Uber downloaded, have a friend pick you up and drop you off at a predetermined location, right? Have your own transportation. Especially in the case of stealthing, I think it is a really good idea to have Plan B on hand. You can get Plan B really low cost from Planned Parenthood. I think I got mine for like under $40. I don't even remember how much it was. Having Plan B on hand is really good. Personally, for me, even as an ace person that doesn't really engage in a lot of sexual activity, and I am on birth control, I don't necessarily think I would be in a scenario where I would need Plan B, but I always have it on me. I always have like stuff like that on me, because even if I don't need it, a friend might need it, and it's better for me to have it, because especially you want to have it beforehand. This is gonna get heavy for a minute. This is why I think you should have Plan B before you think you need it. Because if you experience stealthing and you're not on birth control besides condoms, Plan B is most effective as soon as possible, like after the occurrence of unprotected sex. So the sooner you can get to it, the more effective it will be. So if you have to wait to get a Planned Parenthood appointment and wait to get the prescription, but then you're also dealing with the trauma fallout from having had your consent violated, like, you might not be mentally able or physically able to like drive a car to go to the clinic. You might not be mentally or physically able to call and confirm an appointment. Like it's really fucked up, and it's really like sad in the scenario in which you may need to have this on hand immediately. But it's better to have it on hand and just have it there and not play with the window of like effectiveness for that. You can also get emergency IUD insertion, but that's like a pretty extreme measure, and I don't think most people end up doing that. But like having Plan B on hand is, I think, just generally a really, really good idea. Yes, Aquamoon, I am getting to that in a minute. I'm getting that to the minute. You are ahead of the curve. You are correct. So yes, I think that is a really, again, just a good thing to have, even if you don't think you need it. Just a good backup method to have. Share your location with friends. If you have Google Maps on your phone, which most people do, you can use that as a way to share your location with friends. Share the address of where you're going. Tell people how long you expect to be gone, when you expect to be back, and what to do if you don't get in contact with them again. You can also have a safe call or a safe text. Have a planned check-in during the encounter to let someone know that you are okay. However, if someone takes away your phone, obviously you're not going to be able to do the safe call. So you do need to have a plan for what to do if you're not able to contact someone. It is the mom friend thing to carry the plan B in case others need it. It is the mom thing. Listen, be the mom friend that you wish you had. Be the mommy. Be the capital M mommy. So yes, to get to what Aquamoon said, have a check-in buddy, someone to text and ensure all's okay, create a safe word that they know to indicate SOS. Yes. Having a code word with the friends or a code phrase or something to say. Both, so they like have different ones, right? Have one that says everything's good, it's all gravy, having a fun time, and have one that says fucking pick me up right now or call the police. Like, you know, have those things. Do you think stealthing victims should go to the hospital? My reluctance with answering this is that, like, I know ER visits are expensive and that with COVID, going into an ER is a bad idea. But also, if you, for example, live in California and stealthing is a prosecutable crime, going to a hospital immediately afterwards would probably be a good idea if you decide to prosecute in the future. I think stealthing victims should go to the hospital if they feel like they need to or should go to the hospital. There are lots of circumstances where that may not be the right choice for the person as a victim. And I want people to do what they think is best for them. I think if it was me, I probably would. Or actually, you know what? I think for me, because I have Plan B at home, I probably just like, it's not illegal where I live, so there's nothing I could do about it, really. I would just like probably stay at home and take Plan B. You know. But everyone's going to be different in that conclusion, and I'm not sure what the right answer is there. I'm not sure if you should or shouldn't. Yes, you can also use the Find My Phone feature for phone location tracking as well. Google Maps has a built-in location sharing feature, which is what I was referencing, but I think Find Your Phone, which is like an Apple thing, I think works as well. So let's get into the classic things that people tell people to do to prevent assaults in a direct and conflict-oriented fashion. If you've noticed, a lot of what I've talked about has been about preventing the assault from happening, not what to do when the assault is happening. A lot of people are very pro, like, oh, you should take self-defense classes. You should, I don't know why I'm doing that voice. Here, where? There we go. That's better. A lot of people are like, oh, you should have pepper spray. You should have mace. You need to take self-defense classes, learn judo, do this and this and this. Those can be useful in certain circumstances, but not typically in the specific lens of like an otherwise consensual casual sexual encounter suddenly turning non-consensual. Because if your pepper spray is way the fuck over there in your purse, it's useless, right? If you've left it by the front door and you're upstairs by the bedroom, that pepper spray's not helping your ass. It's way the fuck over there. And a lot of self-defense classes are about like preventing things happening if somebody comes up to you from behind, or if somebody confronts you in the street, or things like that. Not a lot of self-defense classes that I'm at least aware of that I've seen, like teach you like when someone's already on top of you and is mid-coitus, how do you do self-defense when a man who is twice your size is literally on top of you physically? So it can be helpful in certain situations, but not in all. So quoting directly from the research here, for years, a certain amount of controversy has surrounded the issue of whether or not a woman should physically resist a sexual assault. Studies support points of view ranging from strong resistance to total submission. There is no hard and fast rule when it comes to self-defense. Ultimately, the decision rests with the individual and should be based on considerations such as the location, isolated versus populated, whether or not a weapon is involved, the victim's physical capabilities, the perceived chance of success, and other factors in order to determine whether active self-defense will be effective. And in order for active self-defense to be effective, you have to be completely confident that you are capable of exerting whatever force is necessary to fend off your attacker. Because the thing that the research does show is that a half-hearted resistance, if you don't think you can overcome the person, tends to escalate the situation and make it worse and cause the other person to become more violent in response and cause more injury. So you have to be like completely confident and have the knowledge in your back pocket whenever necessary to do whatever you have to do in order to physically resist. And if you can't do that, having a more passive defense response may actually be better for your safety. I personally, just to really hammer this point home, the likelihood of you surviving and or not getting permanent physical injury is more important than being able to say, I physically resisted. People hold up physical resistance as the gold standard. I hold up your ass staying alive as being the gold standard. If you are in a scenario where you feel like you could not, even if you totally physically resisted, you could not overcome the person, having overactive self-defense may not be the correct response for that situation. And something else may be necessary, right? Like if you're in public, right, and somebody comes up to you and tries to do something, screaming really, really loud directly at them, like whatever it is that's happening, like the advice that I usually hear people give is like not like just fucking screaming, but also screaming exactly what is happening as it's happening, so everyone else around you that is later going to be witnesses can identify, this is what this person was saying was happening, this is what I was seeing happening. But like, if you're thinking you're gonna like, take the guy's eyes out and like, punch him in the nuts or whatever, like you have to be completely sure you can incapacitate him, right? Yeah, not many people having pepper spray on them during sex, I'd imagine. Active self-defense is not likely in such circumstances. Post hoc self-defense, if the state refuses to prosecute, however, I think I get the implication. If you go kill Bill later, I'm not responsible for that. Australia is that messed up place where having any form of self-defense weaponry gets you prosecuted. Pepper spray is illegal, let alone anything more severe. That's really interesting. I didn't know that. I'm actually not sure how effective pepper spray is, now that I think about it. Like in terms of like prevention, like is it actually useful to have pepper spray? I don't know. Yeah, I don't want to get into like concealed carry gun stuff. I guess that's sort of part of the implication is like, hey, if somebody does something to you, but also like, again, like if we're talking about a casual sex scenario and your gun is in your purse downstairs, and a guy that's 3 times your size and twice your height or whatever the fuck is on top of you currently, that gun's not going to do shit even if you do have it and are trained how to use it. So, again, certain circumstances, different things are going to be effective. And the reality that I'm talking about is a otherwise consensual sex act suddenly turning non-consensual. So, a couple more bullet points here. Other things you can do to keep yourself safe, right? Don't meet for drinks prior to sex. Don't do that 420 shit. Don't be smoking the devil's lettuce before you have sex with a stranger. The reason for that is not because I'm a prude that thinks that 420 sex is bad. It's because you don't want to impede your ability to communicate, revoke consent, or leave safely from a situation with a stranger that you are not familiar with, right? Don't appeal, like, if you fucking get super drunk with a stranger, are you gonna get behind a car and get a DUI in order to leave? Are you gonna be able to find your keys? Are you gonna be able to get in your fucking car? So, just be really careful. I don't advocate for any kind of intoxication plus strangers involving sex. That is really, really, really dangerous. Don't go with them in their car. If you're going to dinner, if you're going to a date, and they say, oh, yeah, let me pick you up, it's just easier, parking's really bad. No. Get an Uber, get a taxi, take the fucking bus, have a friend drop you off, pick you up. Don't go in their car. Have your own transportation, right? Minimize their ability to isolate you. Minimize your ability to be isolated. Do not have them pick you up from your house. Because even if they don't get sexually violent during the encounter, they could take a no badly and then in the future stalk you. So make sure they can't find your actual address and then stalk you later. Do not go to their house. Don't have them come to your house. Go to a neutral location, right? A hotel, an Airbnb, perfect. Great, we love it. Have somewhere that's a neutral location where, you know, who knows what kind of fucking fun house of horrors they could have set up for when they finally take a girl home, right? Don't go to their house. If you're in the kink community, if you're polyamorous, you can also go to a neutral public place, right? You can go to BDSM parties where sex is allowed. You can go to swingers parties. You can go to orgy events. Like, there's lots of options where you can have sex around other people, and that can increase the safety because if something goes wrong, other people may notice it. It's easier for other people to intervene when you ask for help, etc., etc., etc. So the very last final things I want to talk about are how to say no in using safe words. So most people are not naturally confrontational, and especially if you were somebody who was socialized as a woman, you were probably taught, again, to prioritize pleasing other people, minimizing your own needs, yada, yada, yada. We already talked about all that. So learning how to say no under those circumstances can be very difficult, but it's not impossible. I do have an entire other video that I have planned that I haven't finished yet, where I focus on all the ways that you can learn how to say no and how to stick up for your boundaries, which I do think are really important. So that video will come out at some point in the near-ish future, maybe sometime this month, maybe in February, I'm not sure. But just some kind of quick tips for saying no if that's, you know, again, not the freeze response, not overcoming a freeze response, but how to say no in non-freeze response situations. So, like, number one, desensitize yourself to saying the word no. Because sometimes the reason why we have trouble saying the word no is because we're not used to it. And if you don't have practice saying something that's hard to say in a non-threatening circumstance, when you need to say it in a dangerous circumstance, it's much harder to remember to say it then. So you can do things like you can say it to yourself in the mirror, you can repeat it to yourself in the shower, you can say it to yourself again in the car on like the way to the date, you can practice with a friend saying no to each other, right? Like, do you want pizza? No, thank you, right? But practice just saying the word no and getting over the hump of being like, oh, I shouldn't say no, I need to be a people pleaser, I need to, you know, make sure everyone's happy, blah, blah, blah. Like, desensitize the word no. That can be really, really helpful. If it's still difficult to say the word no, there are lots of other phrases that you can say instead that get across that same, like, I don't want to do this implication and purpose of saying the word no, right? You can say things that are still clear and specific that communicate the same idea without using the literal direct word. This is my first time watching on Twitch as well. Super important. Yeah, I'm glad you're watching. Thanks for being. Hopefully you're learning something, learning some skills. So some of those phrases that don't involve the word no but still communicate that you want something to no longer be happening is, I want to do that right now. Please don't do that. Can you stop? That's not something I'm comfortable doing. Any combination of those words and phrases said in a firm and direct voice can be really good alternatives to saying no. However, especially when you're dealing with a stranger, a lot of people do not take rejection well. And that's something that you might want to be cautious about, especially if you have maybe a really big size difference or something, right? Or you're meeting them in private or what have you. Like I mentioned earlier, you can do something that's like a compliment sandwich or like a positivity sandwich, right? Make them feel all good and happy before you give them the bad news, right? Wrap it up in a little nice bow. So you can say something like, hey, I'm really into you and you're super hot and I'd love to see you again, but don't think I'm ready to have sex right now. Like I can see for some people how that might come across as like deceptive or like misleading, but again, your priority is keeping your ass alive and not activating people to the state of like wanting to physically harm you. So if you sugarcoat things a little bit to avoid somebody wanting to physically cause you harm, I think that that's fine. So, don't say lies, right? Like if you don't want to see them ever again, maybe don't say I'm really into you and I want to see you again. Like pick something that's true about the situation, and you can be a little bit hyperbolic with it, but don't like completely say a lie if it's not what you actually mean, because that'll just get him more mad, right? But you can do something that's like a positivity thing. Say the nice thing first, then the rejection, and then the nice thing, kind of a reconfirmation of like I'm really into you or whatever. And hopefully that'll help soften the blow enough to where they may not take the rejection as hard, and they may be more able to hear that no, basically. Do remember, though, that you are able and allowed to say no at any time. You can say no before sex. You can say no during sex. You can say no if you haven't even taken your clothes off. You can say no when they're just about to come. You can say no even if she's like, oh my God, please keep going. I'm just about to orgasm, blah, blah, blah. Like, it doesn't matter. You are able to say no. Your consent is always revocable. You could promise someone. You could make a promise, I will have sex with you. You can still say no. You're allowed to break a promise. Okay, that's fine. You can do that. So those are some ways that you can say no. Maybe make saying no a little bit easier. And again, there's like an escalating level of like situations in which it's harder to hurt her and say no, right? There's like saying no when somebody's asking what you want. They're saying no when somebody's already doing the thing. They're saying no when somebody's doing a thing you told them earlier not to do. And then there's saying no when somebody's like forcibly trying to do something you don't want them to do. So like there's a spectrum of like how hard it is to say no. But with practice and with self-confidence and saying no, if the situation is safe to say no in, to be clear. Because sometimes, again, it just pisses big angry man person off, right? And so you don't want to, say no when it's safe to say no. And unless you're having a freeze response, right? If you're having a freeze response, it's different. But you can develop the confidence and the ability to say no in various ways, right? Consent is revocable. It's true. No is valid at any point before and during. All right, I'm going to check comments real quick because I'm just about to be in the last point. Is a woman lying about taking birth control considered stealthing? That's not the same thing as stealthing. That is a form of reproductive coercion. Somebody sabotaging birth control, somebody lying about birth control, somebody poking holes in a condom, somebody saying they're on birth control when they're really not. That is reproductive coercion, and that is wrong and that is bad, regardless of the person and the gender of the person doing it. Okay, so very, 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 very final point here is the subject of safe words. Safe words, beautiful, beautiful safe words. Yes, it is on Twitch. I am on Twitch and I'm on YouTube. It's amazing. This is my first time watching you on Twitch as well. This is an important one. I'm glad I caught it. Yeah, thanks for being here. So and like I said, we're on the last point, and then I need to eat food. So I'm going to do that and then edit a video because I spent 6 hours writing this earlier today. So I'm sure I'll use this as a reference for future content and videos and stuff. So anyways, so safe words. Safe words are a really, really great tool. I am in the kink community. I'm sure most of you watching, being my followers, are also in the kink community and probably know about the concept. Safe words are basically a thing that you can do that is an alternative way of saying no or please stop, especially when that no or please stop may be mistaken for role play or may be mistaken for like actually wanting more, right? So a safe word could be like literally safe word. It could be saying red. It could be pineapple, kumquat, whatever. But some kind of pre-agreed term where if you say it, the activities you're doing immediately end, right? And I think even if you're not engaging in like full out BDSM, right? If you're doing like, a casual hookup that's going to involve some kinky sex, like maybe they're going to hold your arms and pin you down. Maybe they're going to have some kind of other bondage. Maybe they have cuffs. Maybe they have, they want to do spanking. They have a silk blindfold, whatever. Even if you're doing something that is really, really within your limits and like is like simple or beginner, I still think having a safe word is a really good tool to use. If only because, like, well, if you don't need to use it, then like no harm is done. But if you do need to use it, it could end up being really helpful. I don't recommend during casual sexual encounters having something that would impede your consent, or impede your ability to revoke consent, i.e., speaking. I don't advocate for wearing like gags, for example, because if you can't speak, then it's way harder for somebody to tell if you're into something or not. And then you have to have like more complicated alternatives to an actual safe word, which I'm not going to get into because I've talked about it elsewhere before. But in general, playing on the light side, playing within your limits, having a safe word still a good idea, because even if you don't need it, it's just like good to have it. And I think even vanilla people having vanilla sex could use safe words if they wanted to. Wow, you are a super trooper in the stream. Thank you.
Wow, you are a super trooper in the stream. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm glad. We've been having good conversations, and I'm happy to hear it. DW, I think I saw your comment earlier. It was on my video, and I just want to know, that I acknowledged that. I saw it. I'm still curious to hear your thoughts about PUA, MRA, etc., as things which can bring people there on the wrong side of someone who's not know about boundaries. As things which can bring people on the wrong side of someone who's not. I mean, there are some small things that I think pickup artists can be helpful about, but it's not because they're pickup artists. It's not like, ooh, this is like a secret advice that only PUAs have. In terms of like self-confidence, grooming, things like that, I think they can help people with, and maybe they can help people, like, if people are going from complete black-pilled incel to like maybe has hope for having a relationship in the future, like maybe it could be part of like something becoming more positive. But I think it usually ends up going in the opposite direction, especially if somebody doesn't have success with pickup artist advice. Because for the most part, the things that pickup artists talk about is like bullshit. Like in terms of like, women want this, women need to be taken, blah, blah, blah. Women are all hypergamous and they're looking to have sex with only the richest males. And it's like, most women don't fucking care, Is removing barriers like dental dams or in condoms considered stealthing? The definition that's used, it's hard because not enough places have legally like legislated what constitutes stealthing for that to have panned out. Personally, I would consider removing dental dams or in condoms to be stealthing. But it's also like part of the reason why, like sex workers, use like internal condoms is because they are harder to remove without noticing in the way that like a regular condom is. Can you provide us for advice for the situations in which someone forgets their safe word in the heat of the moment? Yes, great idea. I do have a video that I made a couple of years ago that is basically like called the problem with safe words. And safe words are only as useful as the situation in which they're used and the people using them. If someone decides to ignore a safe word, if somebody can't hear a safe word, if somebody forgets a safe word, if somebody freezes up and can't use a safe word, then a safe word's not useful, right? It's only useful in the circumstances in which it has to be used. So if you forget a safe word, nonverbal communication during BDSM is really important. I am not advocating for relying on nonverbal communication. I don't think you should ever use it by itself. But it's something that as a top, especially, you should pay attention to. And as a sex partner, you should be paying attention to. Because if somebody goes completely stiff and silent and is not responding to you and is not reacting, you should probably check in. If when they are asked a question, they say nothing back, you should check in. If somebody forgets a safe word in the moment, like they literally can't remember what it is, if they're having like an outright panic response, like honestly, if it was me, I might just start screaming repeatedly in a really like unsexy, unfun way until they notice something was wrong. If I had like the presence of mind to be able to do something else, like I would make it as physically obvious as possible that what was happening was no longer okay for me. But if I didn't, and I was trapped in my little mind palace because I went off into dark subspace land, at that point you are relying on somebody being acutely aware enough of your nonverbal behavior and not being too much of an asshole to like check in because like, hey, you went completely stiff and silent. Are you okay? Hey, you aren't able to make eye contact with me. Are you okay? Like there has to be something as a top that you're aware of to look for. But that is part of the risk of doing BDSM that I think you have to be aware of, is that potentially someone could forget to use a safe word or be unable to use a safe word when they need to. Good point. Beautiful Angel says the second safe word no one talks about is the I forgot my safe word. Yes. I think if someone says I forgot my safe word, or just says stop that, like there's a difference between like, oh, stop that, it's so fun, and stop that. Like if you are using, like if you are normally a really giggly, happy, like fun, lighthearted bottom, right? And you change tone and you talk like you are disciplining a dog. Like if you talk like you are like saying no bad dog, like if you use the no bad dog voice, that would be what I would do. To clearly communicate, hey, this needs to stop. Like that's not gonna sound like sexy fun times. That's not gonna sound like, oh, she's playing along, or just saying I forgot. Like, hey, I forgot. Like this needs to stop. I forgot my safe word. If you have enough like control still in your brain to be able to say something, but you don't know the particular word you need to say that. It's called having empathy. Yeah, some people are also really bad at reading body language, like, or just don't have the ability to, right? Like a lot of people that are like neurodivergent, people that are on the autism spectrum. Like, I don't want to like shame anybody for not having that ability, because some people just like don't. But like that is a risk factor you're playing with that has to be like accounted for. Doms who paid attention to sub nonverbals are rad. They are rad. Would you consider someone lying about being on prep or Valtrex as stealthing? No. I think, is it that hard to understand what stealthing's about? Stealthing is when you remove a barrier that you consented to have as part of the sex act. So if the only reason you were consenting to the sex act was because a physical barrier was present and that physical barrier gets removed without your consent, that is what stealthing is. Stealthing is not lying. Stealthing is not saying you had an STI test when you didn't. Stealthing is not saying you're on prep when you're not. I guess bug chasing, maybe if you lied about being on prep. I don't know. That terminology doesn't fall into that exact terminology, I think. That would just be lying. I don't think it has a special word. It's probably just lying. Ha! Who's Destiny? Destiny is a unreasonably popular streamer who normally talks about politics but then gets embroiled in hot takes on Twitter. And he basically victim blamed a woman on Twitter for like 24 hours and then deleted all of his tweets. And basically said that if you can't say no during sex, it's your fault and you should never be allowed to have sex again. So anyways, I had to write a 7-page, 3-hour fucking long essay about why everything he said was wrong and how he has the wrong information on the actual numbers of who perpetuates assault, who gets assaulted, reactions to being assaulted, what's typical, what's not, you know, all that stuff. I just had to correct the record, really, because no one else had the information that I did. Ha! Who's Destiny's Child? Truly a question for the ages. All right, you guys, I've been streaming for 3.5 hours. I could keep going probably, but I shouldn't. I need to take my dog outside. She's been very patient. So, let's give like 5 minutes for like a Q&A. Yeah, Destiny like the Twitch streamer. So if you guys have any questions, anything else you guys want to talk about, ask me now. Otherwise, I can't promise I can get to it, but I will try my best before 9:30 to answer some questions in case anything is confused. I think we need a collab stream with Healthy Gamer. I would love to do something with Dr. K. I would love to talk to Dr. K about like kink and consent and boundary setting. I think that would be super great. I feel like I'm probably too small fry for him, TBH. As someone who was stealth as a young woman, thank you for talking about this and making the information accessible. I am very glad to, Eliza. I'm sorry that happened to you. I hope that I can prevent things like this from happening in the future, or people blaming themselves or not knowing what their options are. Can you make a video about when fetishes and reality collide? Oh, I have videos already on fetishes versus reality. You should check out my channel. I'm not gonna rest. I'm gonna edit a video. What are you guys talking about? Listen, being self-employed means that I have days where I work 12 hours and days where I work 3 hours, and there's no in between. I never just have a normal 8-hour work day. It's just never how it works. I do also have to dye my hair. Oh my god, I have so much stuff I need to do. I never considered having plan B on hand, and I will definitely have some in case the condom breaks with my sexual partner. Oh yeah, and that's the thing. Like, you don't have to have plan B because of like non-consensual reasons. Like, plan B is also good because like condoms just fail sometimes. Sometimes you think you're gonna pull out and you don't, because coordinating pulling out is hard. Like, you know. Caffeine is fun. I don't drink caffeine, generally speaking. It's bad for me. My brain does not agree with it. Don't get decaffeinated chai tea, though. It's gross. The worst. Do you normally watch any political streamers, or are you just covering the subject? I purposely do not invest in any kind of political streamer culture. I'm more covering this because of the subject. I don't watch Destiny. I'm like a regular viewer of his. I do watch Hassan sometimes, and I used to watch Vosh like a year and a half ago, and then I decided that I don't like him very much, and so I don't watch him anymore. But if I watch a political streamer, it's usually Hassan, and it's the YouTube clips. Like, I'm never like in a political streamer live stream. It's like, oh, the highlights of like, let's talk about prison abolition, you know, like that kind of thing. Have you ever been interested in discussing the subsections of LGBT plus BDSM history? I have, actually. I have a video from last year I did with Pup Amp on a queer BDSM history, and I have talked about BDSM history, which is innately tied to queer history, at least in America. So I have talked about it before. Amy, thank you so much for this. The world needs more educated people talking about trauma and everything else you do. Generally a great person. Oh, thank you. Same with the awesome people we got today. Yeah, you guys were great. I didn't even have to. I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to block some people. I was prepared for that, and I didn't. You guys were great. I had to block some spammers, but that happens. Sorry if you saw it ignoring, but potential. Oh no, sorry, I didn't see it. I was barely looking at the chat most of the time I was on, so I'm sure I missed a lot of stuff. I would definitely consider doing a video on like a like eStim, basically. Let's just say that. But electroplay is risky enough to where I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that until I like had more opportunities to consult experts on the safety of electroplay, which I'm very much not, because I like TENS units, but you know, a lot of other electroplay I'm not super comfy with. I do love Sean, but I don't consider like Sean's not a streamer. Does he stream? I love Sean's videos. Sometimes he has like weird takes on Twitter, but like, don't we all? Everyone, like, there's so many people that have different personalities in their content versus on Twitter, and I find that like fascinating, because somewhere they're lying. I don't, you never know which one it is. I didn't get to heat my tea, but I am gonna heat it now. I'm gonna microwave it, and I'm sorry. That's gonna be how it is. You want a video on like lesbians that, like a lesbian woman that does BDSM? Stevie Bobby has a video talking about her BDSM interests. 7, how do I do BDSM with mental health issues? Yes. Oh, that's from my FAQ. I was like, oh, should I have covered that? You know, yes, exactly. I try to only talk about the things I'm equipped to talk about based on my own personal experience and knowledge. And I cannot give advice on, you know, everyone's individual mental health. Oh, I love Big Joel. Of course I love Big Joel. Oh my God. Because just look at who I follow on Twitter. You're going to find the people I watch on YouTube. I watch Big Joel. I watch Sean. I watch Cat Black. You know, those are my YouTube go-tos, really. Yeah, Vosh is kind of, I fell out with Vosh mostly because he had, he got really like just dog-headed. What the fuck is the term? He just buried his head in the sand on the like kink at Pride issue, cause like I know Vosh is pan, I think, or bi. Anyways, he talks about fucking everybody's dads, so like he's some kind of non-heterosexual human. So like he is somebody that goes to Pride. Like he's allowed to be. That's not in contention. But like he doesn't have an understanding of the kink community or the history of consent or the intertwinings that happen between BDSM and queer history, and was just like completely unwilling to hear that as like a he's like, no, Pride is for kids. Don't wear your leather daddy chaps at the Pride parade or you're a predator. And like he was just willing to call everyone pedophiles, and I was like, oh, can we not just like, pedo jacketing is not an argument. Can we not? Like, I was like, oh my God. But I get it. It's like sometimes you have hot, bad takes and you regret it later and you change your mind. But I was not down for that. So I kind of just like messed up watching things involving him for me. Yeah, red flags. Yeah, it's like the worst person you know made a good point. Like, that's how I feel about it sometimes. Stevie B is not a good source for information that I've seen, only know him. Oh yeah. Well, no. The person, Cat Black is not a lesbian. The person asked for, can you talk about lesbians that do BDSM? I'm not saying that Stevie Bobby does BDSM in a good way. I am saying Stevie Bobby has talked about being a lesbian that does BDSM and is the only person I know. If you want to know about the trans experience of doing BDSM, Cat Black does have a lot of videos about that. But I have, the only video of Stevie Bobby that I've ever watched is the one where she talked about being a sadist. So, I do not have any further opinions about her content or endorsement of it because I simply do not know. Oh no, Destiny and Vosh are on like different levels. Like Destiny, like just screams. Like he screams and then like tilts at windmills, and it's amazing to me that like people watch him and take his opinion seriously, because he can have like calm conversations. He can sit and listen to people, but like if he feels in any way like threatened and he feels like he has to double down on a point, game over. Like if he loses league before a debate, you're fucked. Like you are not going to have a pleasant conversation with him. It's physically impossible. Like you'll say, well, I don't think that all situations where you have to say no are the same, and it's probably harder to say no in a situation where somebody has just brazenly violated your consent versus saying no where somebody just asked you for your opinion. And he'll be like, oh, I see. Well then fucking you think that women shouldn't be expected to say no. And I can't even replicate how he does it, because like I'm not that kind of person. I don't scream. I don't raise my voice. I've done it like twice maybe in my whole life. you know, I can't even replicate that kind of thing. And it's like people mistake confidence and rhetorical capability for being correct. And like at no point did in this conversation or at Kink of Pride did anyone like actually cite any figures or data to back their opinions whatsoever. They just like intuitively reasoned despite the fact they hate intuitive reasoning. They just intuitively reasoned that like you're more likely to be assaulted in a casual sexual scenario than in an intimate relationship, and that kink up pride doesn't make sense. Like they just went like, yeah, that's the truth. That's how it is, and it's not. It's more complicated than that, as it turns out. I am not sure of any trans masc or NB people that talk about BDSM from like an educational perspective, but as soon as I know one, I will talk about it. I mean, I hadn't thought about it before, but I feel like Elon Musk could be that first domino in the normalizing people you disagree with, calling them a pedophile. I feel like that could definitely be the case. Part of me thinks we should get an Evie live stream where she experiences and gives first reactions to kink talk content for science. Well, the video I did on alpha submissives and the one that I did on soft doms was essentially me having a more refined reaction to like the kids on the internet inventing new terminology and then like talking about it like it's been around for decades. I'm working on a video right now that'll probably come out after Valentine's Day, where I talk about pleasure doms. That's the new big one. Everyone on TikTok and on dating apps is like, I'm a pleasure dom, which means I like orgasm control. And they just talk about it like it's been a word that people have been using since fucking 1975, and it's not. Y'all invented that term maybe 2 years ago. Calm down. That's the part that entertains me. Don't even get me started on fucking what's her name? Riley Grace, RGD, something, whatever the fuck her name is. The one that was like, if you have a foot fetish and you have your partner wear sandals in public so you can see your partner's feet and mentally be aroused by it, that's assault. You're violating everyone's consent around you by being a sandal enjoyer. It's like the logical conclusion of like the original point she made that doesn't make the original point good or accurate or in any way helpful to society. But I'm not a deontologist, so what do I know? I do not brook with deontology. Yeah, Riley Grace Rochon, RGR, not RGD. Who's RG? I'm thinking of someone else. I live for Evie's React videos. I would love to do more React videos. I would love to do more reaction videos. I almost did one to the video that I watched on Patreon last night, which I also did another extra long stream for. So, based on how long this stream has gone, and based on how long my stream went on Thursday, I've definitely made up the missed streaming time from my speaker issues on Monday. So I feel like in my true Catholic way, I have repented for my sins and made them right. No. So that was a rhetorical, like hyperbolic talking point that someone made up. It is not assault if you enjoy your partner wearing sandals outside. That is to dilute the word assault to the point of being utterly meaningless. Is a pleasure dom a sensual dom? So many terms. No. Now I'm gonna, from what I can tell about a sensual dom, it's the same type of thing where somebody that does topping calls themselves a dom and then is like, I do this one thing. And it's like, back in my day, we called that service topping. And now we've decided that we don't like the term top, and we're all going to use the term dom for everything, even things that don't include power exchange. And get used to it. What do you think of kink shaming for DDLG and littles? I feel like it's considered one of the acceptable kinks to shame in the BDSM community. I'm totally against it. I'm very like pro little. I'm very pro DDLG, CGL, what have you. I think that people have a very visceral reaction to things they don't understand and assume are wrong and bad because they don't understand the mental background behind the kink. They just see the physical. You know what's really interesting, actually, related to this? I was looking for the conversation I actually had with Pup Amp. Actually, I was researching this. I discovered that, you know how everyone freaks out about the term teen being one of the Pornhub top search terms? For the last 3 years, the term teen has completely fallen off. It went from being in the top 5 to being in the top 12 to no longer, in the last 2 years, it is not on the top 25 search terms on Pornhub. So everyone that has had a moral panic about normalizing pedophilia and DDLG and age play pornography with consenting adults, it's just a trend. It was a trend. It's not a trend anymore. Fucking the thing we need to worry about now is MILFs, apparently, and Japanese. That was the #1 worldwide search term for porn. Japanese. Is it yellow fever? Is it Orientalism? Or do people not know how to spell hentai? I don't know. Oh, goodness. Yeah, people are really into the incest stuff. That's the new hotness. People are like, yeah, stepmoms. And let me resolve my unresolved childhood issues about my dad getting divorced and remarrying by jerking it to stepmom porn. I don't know. That's probably not it, but that's the stereotype, I guess, right? Listen, if I have to choose an answer between people searching Japanese because they have yellow fever and fetishize Asian women, and people are searching for Japanese because they don't know how to spell hentai, I am definitely opting to believe it is because people don't know how to spell hentai, because I don't think I could handle the reality of people being that racist. But yeah, to get back to the point, I don't think that kink shaming CGL or DDLG is cool. I try really hard in my content, even though I'm not a little, and this is part of the reason why I make content about it, is I want to normalize it, and I think it helps people maybe to hear it from a third party that it doesn't do it themselves, to hear about why are people into this? What is this about? Blah, blah, blah. And I know because I have a lot of people that watch my video, particularly the one I did on ABDLs recently, which I know is not the same thing as CGL. Where a lot of people are like, this is a really good description. I totally understand it now. You know, it helps resolve a lot of misconceptions. But that being said, a lot of people definitely have a lot of stigma around it. I think it is going away the more visible it is, but it's certainly by no means solved. I don't have too much faith in humanity. I just don't want to recognize my lack of faith in humanity. It's two different things. People can be racist. They can be. And it's disappointing, but if they're going to be racist somewhere, it's always in the porn, isn't it? We legalize interracial marriage, but there's still lots of, I'm not even going to say the word, but if you know, you know. Lots of To Kill a Mockingbird type scenarios. All right, my dear friends, my dear viewers. It is quite late. It is approaching 10 p.m. I'm afraid I must go. It always turns into another 20. I can't help it. I love talking to you guys. It's fun. All right. Well, I'm not gonna. I am not pro kink shaming. I think it is okay to be critical and have conversations of kinks that you think lead to problematic things. But I don't think it's like objectively okay to like just blanketly be like anyone who does this kink is gross and deserves to be put in jail. Like I don't think that that's like productive. Mm. Yeah, Cat Black has interesting videos about that for sure. Okay, so I don't have time to get into this, but I thank you guys so much for being here. We do stream every Friday at 6 p.m. PST. That's 9 o'clock on the East Coast, 2 a.m. in the UK, and 11 a.m. in Australia. So, hang out wherever you are around the globe. Hopefully, you guys are having a good night or a very good early morning or afternoon, depending on where you are on the planet. Thank you all so much for listening to this. I really, really hope that this maybe shed some light on some things or helped you in some way or taught you something. Just, I try my best. Hopefully, we got something out of this dialogue. And I'll be back with a video tomorrow. How about that, huh? Video, collaboration, fun times. We love it. Okay, all right. Have a good night, everyone. I will talk to you soon.